Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the SeaBros Fishing Podcast. On today's show, we have a returning guest. This is actually his third time on the podcast, Captain Damon Sacco of Castafari Sportfishing. Damon's a great guy. He's a wealth of knowledge. We talk about a ton of fun stuff on this one. Some new topics. Damon goes into how he sees the future and progression of tournament fishing. Going into the next, few years, the next decade, we nerd out and talk about some tactics that we wish we could spend a lot of time trying offshore to see if they work, that we haven't had the opportunity to yet. He talks about the bluefin fishery and compares it to from when he started until now, and what we're seeing for bait, what he's seen for biomass of fish, how the ecosystem shifted. And then we talk a lot about trolling. Damon loves to troll artificial, dead baits, ballyhoos, mackerel. So he goes into some detail on that and what his program typically is aboard the Castafari. And of course, we talk about his seminar. The Castafari Offshore Seminar is February 25th and 26th at the Marriott Hotel in Quincy, Mass. It's a great show. It's a great way to kickstart your season, network, meet new people, hear from some great captains, mates. You got hands-on demonstration, tons of stories, tons of vendors. It's a great time. So I really enjoyed this conversation with Damon, as always, and we hope that you guys do too. So enjoy, everybody. Welcome to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast, where we follow 3 words of wisdom. You can't catch them if you don't have a hook in the water. Always trust your instincts. And the last, you'll just have to keep listening. Stay tight.
Am I coming off or what? Get that down. Don't get on that.
So,
Fishing was nuts.
Fishing was nuts this year.
Fishing was fucking nuts, man.
It really was.
Good. It was too good, right? It was too good. Anybody could go out and catch a fish. So now there's 500 pros out there every day selling giant tuna.
I know. But from
Selling and giving them away.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much. Yeah.
From a fishing perspective, though, it's pretty awesome to have what we have and saw last year.
Absolutely.
That's what you dream about.
I think this is perfect segue to go right into one of your questions to him about
Yeah.
what's he seen for a progression of bluefin
Yeah,
over the years.
specifically, so Taylor and I obviously putting together some new things to ask you, but you've been doing this, what? Close to, I don't want to age you.
Oh, thanks. See, we'll be editing that out. Edit that out as well, please.
At least 30 years.
I've been
Kidding. Don't edit it out.
I don't know if it's been since the 90s, so I don't know. Let's see, do some quick math. 25 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, 25 years.
So in your 25 years, just biomass of bluefin, the fishing.
And the bait.
And the bait specifically.
It's changed a lot.
Yeah.
It's done a lot of U-turns and S-turns. I remember when I first started out, there were...
Oh boy.
That's all right. Don't worry about
it. When I first started out, we had trouble meeting the quota. Actually, no. When I first started out, there were closed days, and the quota would close halfway through each month, like they do now.
Yeah.
So in August, when August 15th rolled around, it would be closed. And I remember going out to Stellwagen on closed days and having a ball because I was by myself. Nobody was fishing recreationally back then. It was just me and a couple other idiots that were trolling Rapala Magnums around, and Johnny White was telling me at Fisherman's Outfitter, those hooks will never work, and because they had the dual, they weren't trebles, they were the dual hooks,
the double prongs.
The double prongs, and they did hold, and I was catching giants on those things, and then we get them to the boat and we'd be like, what the hell are we gonna do now? But that fishery back then was great. There were a lot of fish around. And then, I feel like we got into the 2000s and it just dropped off, and then we never met our quota. We had a year, like a 5-year stint where like the quota just never got met. And so it was weird because we kept losing a little chunk of quota at ICAT every year for like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years. And then slowly but surely the fish, and there were a lot of little fish back then, because I remember I did a lot of charters east of Chatham, and they were in the bank too. And I know you guys were doing it, eventually. And I don't know when you guys started in the 2000s, probably, right? Working
2000s.
with your dad. And there were tons of little fish around, but not a lot of huge fish, But I feel like all those fish that were there grew up, and now that's the stocks. Those are the stocks that we have. And so it's interesting to see that progression. So those fish survived, but I feel like, the bait issue is definitely a concern. And I feel like, when there's a lot of bait, there's a lot of fish. And when there's not a lot of bait, it's a pretty simple equation. But like I watched Chatham go from like, a ghost town to like a thriving fishery over the past few years because of the bait, I mean, there's so many sand eels down there. It's insane. Like I've never seen so many sand eels.
Yeah.
Like this year I was going out to the Sword. I only went 3 times. And the 3 times we went, it was like you could catch them on the troll. You could catch, 700 pounders on the troll. That's how many fish there were. And you just had to get where the bait was.
Yeah.
And there were just, hundreds of fish stacked in there. I've never seen anything like it.
Were the eels like pinned on the bottom or
Yes.
mid-water mostly?
No, they were pinned, the eels were pinned on the bottom because the whales had them pinned almost in the mud. And the only way to get the fish, well, we were trolling, and I was getting them trolling whoos and stuff, but we would stop the boat when I marked fish. I would take the boat out of gear and I'd let the baits drop, and then make a hard turn, and sometimes we'd be able to get a bite doing that, but sometimes we were just trolling around at 5 knots and we'd get fish right up on the surface. Even when the bait was down low, they would come up from the bottom. But I noticed the guys that were fishing live bait were always right on the bottom. All the bites were just in the mud, and unfortunately the dogfish were there, so you had to kind of work through that shit. But
yeah.
But man, oh man, it was like, one day I was out there, it was a friggin' bloodbath. Every boat had a fish. And there was just bloody slicks all over the water, like it looked like a murder scene. It was like a tuna massacre out there. Yeah. And there were guys in 16-foot whalers, with tails hanging off a cleat. I'm like, Jesus, like anybody could get a fish. I mean, that's how good it was. And I hope it stays like that, but it's a little scary, the fishing effort, how much it's grown. Like that's a big change I've noticed, is like the fishing effort.
Yeah.
Like when we were out there, when I was fishing on the bank, when Scotty and Johnny were with me and you guys were with your dad, there were maybe there were days when it was crowded out there, but like we wouldn't see 80 boat days in the bay.
Yeah.
We just didn't see that. And now it's like,
it's not even necessarily that it's 80 boats are going to put a herding on the school. Like you're going to catch a few, but they're also going to react to that pressure. Like just that pressure, that focus area, it's going to eventually deter them over time. Yeah. If it's over and over and over again. Yeah. Unless it's like Chatham,
Yeah, what do you think it is about Chatham that, I know there's days on end that there's 50 to 200 boats out there. What do you think is it the bait that's keeping the fish there? Is it the depth of water? I
think it's the highway, and I think those fish aren't always resident fish. I think some of them definitely are, but I do think that is I-95 for bluefin, and they just come rolling through there, and they see the whales or hear the whales, and they congregate around the whales because the whales just they sandwich up that bait, and so the fish stick around. But if I was a giant tuna, I'd be trying to find the herring and the mackerel, not sand eels. But those fish are stacked with the sand eels. And I feel like they stick around for a while and then they keep moving, but a whole new batch comes in. Because I noticed Chatham has a lot of different sized fish. One guy's catching a 75-inch fish and another guy's catching an 800-pounder. Where I feel like, when you're in the bay, it's mostly big fish. I mean, I've caught a couple of smaller fish in the bay, but I don't know what you guys saw in the bank.
No,
this year.
agreed. We caught one 90-incher, and all the rest were over 105.
In the bay.
Yeah, in the bay.
In the bay.
The bank, it seems like it's it shifts.
Yeah.
It won't be we had a couple of days that it was short giant. But usually the giants are 70, 5 to 80 inches when you do get the quote unquote giant.
Yeah.
But more often than not, it's like 2 weeks of shorts, and then it'll be 4 weeks in a row of giants, and you might get a short here and there, but they definitely, it's almost like the giants are territorial on the bank.
Yeah.
Like even on spot specific on the bank, you go down to Southwest Corner, for some reason the fish are freaking bigger there.
Yeah.
The majority of the time. And
I think those are bay fish.
Yeah.
yeah, I think
really
they're bait fish
Yeah.
too, but it's strange. What are you, 10 miles apart roughly?
Right.
I know.
That there's
Like the
that much
southeast
of a
corner is
difference.
a whole different
Whole
ecosystem.
different.
Yeah.
You're right. That's a good point. Like there's a lot of smaller fish on the southeast corner, big ones mixed in.
Yeah.
But on the southwest, I think we had 1 year, and I'm sure you guys remember, where it was a slaughter fest with small fish on the corner.
Oh, yeah,
It was
100%.
weird. It was
Yeah.
like 5-6 years ago, and it lasted for whatever, a couple of weeks, and then they were gone.
And they definitely rolled through there. I know a couple guys get shorts, but it's nothing like middle bank. It's nothing like the northern edge of the bank.
I mean, there's eels there. They roll through there.
Yeah. But the
you-
eastern side, it's so
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah.
It's not far away. It's a 20-minute swim for these fish,
It's not that far.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. It's weird though that like there was so much bait on the bank this year. Like I heard, anyways. I didn't really fish up on the bank much. I don't even know if
There was a
we
lot
fished
of
it.
bait.
There is a lot of bait.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can count on one hand the amount of mornings we got out there and we had the like sinking, we're not going to be able to catch bait feeling.
Right.
Most of the time it was like,
That's the worst.
oh, it
I
is
hate
the
that.
absolute worst. You put all that effort in, then you're like spending 4.5 hours trying to catch one bait.
I got a funny story about that. So last I had Anders with me, and I was on a charter, and I had a regular guy, and he wanted to catch one stand up, and so we went to Chatham, and I called, he's like a last minute kind of call me when the bite's good, and so I called him up. I'm like, dude, we went out, trolled a 700 pounder. It's on fire. We caught 3 other ones, and you'll definitely get shots. Let's go. And
Always.
and so he gets on the boat. We're all fired up. We blast out there at like an ungodly hour in the fog. We get there, and the whales are there, and the fleet's there, and the mackerel were easy to get. Like I had gone like 3 days prior, so I get out there, and we could not jig a mackerel to save our life. I mean, I was like, I really didn't want to have to go on the troll, and he didn't want to either. He was like, I'd rather just catch one bait and hold the rod and even hook it. Bottom line is I spent 2 hours trying to jig a mackerel. All we caught were these little Tommy cod, which would die instantly. We throw them in the well and they'd turn sideways. They were dead. And then they'd be, and I was like, well, maybe we'll have to hook one of these. And then I told Anders, like, pull out these nice squid. We were saving them for sword baits. And so like we pull out these beautiful, big Loligo squid, and Anders like sews them up, and so we have a hook bait. And I figured, that thing's going to get chowed. So we'll send it down, drop it to the bottom after marking like a stack of like 20 fish. Meanwhile, everybody's got a bent rod. The radio sounds like a friggin' war zone. And I'm like, and Anders is like, oh, I don't know. I think it's a dogfish. He reels it up. With by the way, 5 pounds of lead, because the Chatham, that's the other thing about Chatham that sucks, is the tide rips. And so we're using these like sash weights out there. I mean, you guys probably drift slower than I do. My boat drifts like 90 miles an hour because there's like a sail from the tower. Mm-hmm. And so I'm always on the sticks trying to keep it, from doing that. But anyways, long story short, we went through those beautiful squid in like 5 minutes. Dogfish just destroyed them. We couldn't even get them to the bottom. So then I was getting really frustrated. So I'm like, fuck it, let's try this. I had this new Shimano like 30K Stella that I'd never used, just stacked with like 130 pound braid. And I had a jig, and I'm like, just send that thing down. So Anders drops it down, he's like, and of course the tide's like, whoo, so the jig's like 45 degrees off the transom. And I'm like, great, he's going to hook one of the, far baits. He gives it one crank, boom. So now we fight that thing, and I'm like, he hands it off to my guy, and so here you go. You wanted to catch one, stand up. Good luck.
Quite the setup.
Yeah, quite the setup. But I had this like little tiny Ralph built a rod that was like, made those little jigging rods that I'm sure you guys have seen them. They're
they don't
little
break.
stubby.
Yeah.
They don't break, and you can put some
Ton of leverage with
wicked
those
heat on them. Yeah. And anyways, so Steve's like just doubled over the transom, and I had to, the fish is dumping the reel, and I'm like, fuck, I gotta back down. So I backed down through like 4 boats fighting fish, and you could tell the guys are like, what the fuck? Because there's a guy with a spinning rod pinned in my transom, and I'm backing down like 90 miles an hour. Bottom line is we got straight up and down on the fish. We fought it for like 2 hours, and then we chafed it off, and I looked at the leader, and I was like, what the fuck is this? And Anders is like, what do you mean? I'm like, what pound test was his leader? He's like, I don't know. I was like, 100 pound. I'm like, what are you using the 100 pound for? And I'm screaming at Anders. So now we put the like 180 on. We drop another jig down instantly. Actually, I dropped it down, and it was kind of fun to just like, it literally was like 1 or 2 pumps, and boom, you just go off. And again,
that bites must be insane.
It is a lot of fun. I'm not gonna lie. Like just and hooking one on a spinning rod. The problem is you're outclassed.
Yeah.
You just feel it. And again, we gave him the rod, and we backed down again and fought that fish for an hour, and that one just the hook pulled. So it was fun, but we actually lost. And then it was like, now what? And everybody's leaving with fish. And of course we finally get mackerel because Schnick comes over and he gives me like 30 of them. And then the bite dies because it was a morning bite,
Oh God.
So, but anyways, that was fun though. But man, I mean, it was insane though, the amount of fish in Chatham. It really was. I've just never. The only time I've seen it like that is in the fall during a closed season day, when there's no killing, and those fish seem to know. It's bizarre. Like they almost know when there's a commercial day versus a closed day.
Yeah, I couldn't
100%.
agree more.
Yep.
Couldn't agree more. The consistency, though, like everywhere, like from Nova Scotia, we talked about this we had Seth Funt a couple of days ago here.
Oh yeah, yep.
And from Nova Scotia to New York, all at the same time, catching tunas.
Yeah.
Varied sizes, 100 inchers, 80 inchers, 60 inchers, 800 pounders. It's just absolutely insane to see how far stretched that the consistent bite is. How
much you think the bunker plays, or the Pogies, or the Menhaden, or whatever everybody calls them? How much do you think that's playing into all this? I mean, I know the herring's important and the mackerel's important, but do you think this influx of Pogies is...
Can't hurt. I mean, I can tell you this, the bay fish love them.
Yeah.
The bay fish we catch are always stacked with Pogies,
Yeah.
I think that's the forage food for the fish in the bay. And I know that like when I'm out fishing in the bay, I'll try to find the Pogies. They're always on the bottom out there. It's weird that do you see a school of Pogies on top out there. Some days you do. I mean, one day we saw them getting crashed. That was fun. But usually, you just find them on the bottom, but they're just thick schools, and there's always fish around them.
Yeah.
So I think that's what they're eating. So I don't know. I mean, I know those Pogies come up, and I think they might bring fish with them. I mean, those big ocean schools that you see from the air that like Wayne shoots sometimes, they're like 2-acre size schools.
Right.
I think those schools of Pogies bring fish. I think
In weird spots.
We saw it
weird
happen
spots.
firsthand. Our first fish of the year was one of those big ocean schools of Pogies. Like we couldn't see the big biomass
Coming into the bay.
but there was small bait balls everywhere. And first drift right through it, we're on.
Yeah, this is in June on Southeast Corner.
Yep.
on the southeast
Corner, bait balls and
Pogies,
Pogies,
which
coming
is like
through.
a fall spot.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But you know what? In June, I used to do bass charters all the time, and I used to go to Race Point when I was fishing out of Green Harbor. And when I would go across, in June only, I would see a lot of fish pushing, and I would see like small groups of Pogies, same thing. And I never stopped and fished, but they had to be eating those Pogies.
Definitely. Pogie bait ball day with Al Dente Nick was right around that same spot.
Yeah.
A little more towards the beach, but
Were the eels, the sand eels at Chatham, were they small and large, or were they all kind of the same size?
I don't remember. I just remember the fish were just stuffed. I mean, absolutely stuffed. And I didn't see any other bait there. It was all eels when the days I was there. But I've never seen sand eels just on the bottom. You know,
usually they're clouded.
Usually they're clouded and the screen's top to bottom, or they're in the middle, or they were down low. Like all these things were in the mud, you know? It was weird.
they were terrified.
Yeah. Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they were just burrowed in there. You
Yeah.
know? It's nuts.
Sidebar to that. talking to Jesse about these tunas with these weird pec fins.
Martello.
I can guarantee you've caught them. They have that kind of weird V pec fin.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, it looks like a Nemo fin. Like almost looks like the line split it during the fight.
Yeah.
And came out, but it's not. It's like all healed and stuff.
So he thinks, this is a weird theory, he thinks they go down to the bottom and actually use the side of their body and use their pec fin to push the sand eels out of the sand and mud so they can eat them.
Well, I'll tell you something. That's a really clever observation because I've caught fish in the bay that are all scraped up on one side.
Yeah.
And I remember posting a video or a picture online and people were like, your fish looks like it has chicken pox. Like, and at first I thought like, maybe the fish had some type of rash, but it really looked like, I've caught a bunch of them like that where it was rubbing on the bottom and it was just irritated but that would make sense if it was doing that on its side, scraping its pec fin down there. And then guys have caught, I haven't really caught them with their gills full of mud, but I've heard that too,
Yeah.
Mm. We caught quite a few with shrimp in them this year, early season. Shrimp and small squid.
Yep. I think they eat those. I've seen that too. I think they eat all that krill and stuff to clean out their digestive tract. Because I've caught fish at the canyons. A lot of bluefin that I've caught at the canyons early in the year have been stuffed with krill like that.
That's cool.
It's weird.
That's weird.
To kind of circle back to trolling, you said you spent a handful of days down in Chatham. You're kind of like...
This year, I mean,
this year. I mean, obviously many days and weeks down there. But what's kind of your like quick soup to nuts dead bait spread down there? You guys seem to troll a lot more dead bait than other boats. And Taylor and I have noticed this since we've known you.
It's an interesting topic always to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like trolling. I actually prefer to troll if I can. There are definitely days when there's a lot of traffic out there, and you don't want to be the asshole trolling around the fleet.
Yeah.
But sometimes in Chatham, especially, probably on the bank too, actually, there are spots where you literally have to drift over the spot. You got to just keep jogging up and then drifting over it, and jogging. And the fleet is like in a hockey arena, and you have to be in that zone to get the bite like that. I don't know why. I don't know if there are oyster beds down there or just the fish, the bait's congregated, but there's these zones. And if you can't get in and that's the thing about Chatham, you don't want to be trolling when it's like that, when there's a fleet out there, because you just can't get over the fish without going into the fleet. But on the days that, things are scattered and there's lots of whales and especially the bubble feeds, I like to troll, mackerel and ballyhoo, like a mix.
Yeah.
And I like a mackerel on a planer because I feel like the mackerel, you can troll high speeds with the mac as long as you hydro gut them, and you don't have to go fancy with the hydro gutting. Like we take out the guts. Sometimes we'll use a mackerel that hasn't been hydro gutted, and we'll just take out the guts, on the fly. We just take a knife, cut the throat latch, inside the gill, and then just gently squeeze out the guts. Because when you do that, you can then pack it full of kosher salt and let the mackerel, sit for a half hour. Do it my mates will do it on the way out.
Yeah.
And then the thing's kind of, douse it in salt, and then it's ready to go. And that thing will fish for 4 hours. You know. And we just troll that, and then we troll a shoot with a ballyhoo way out there, 500 feet behind the boat. Another one maybe 200 feet behind the boat. A couple of bars. I mean, there were guys getting fish. I know Bobby DaCosta caught an 800-pounder on a bar out there. I mean, that's. I know you guys have done it. That's probably one of the coolest bites.
An 800-pounder on a bar is, I think, the scariest bite.
It really is.
100%
You see that half moon shine body of the fish when they come, and it's just it looks like a tank.
Yeah, and 90% of the time, all of their fins are extended. They do that slow down right as they eat. So you're seeing that extended dorsal, sickle tail.
So there's so much displaced water.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
I don't know what's worse, when you see the whole thing, you see the bite, or when you hear the rigger clip and you look back and the boil is the size of a fucking bus.
Right.
And you're like,
that's usually what happens to me.
Shit.
That's always what happens to me because I'm facing the wrong way. So I'll hear I'll hear that snap and the vibration, just that little noise that every boat's different, but I hear, and then I turn around and it's just a friggin' hole. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a great adrenaline rush when that happens.
It really is.
You wonder if there's any, I mean, obviously blue marlin can be insane too, but you wonder if there's anything else in the world that bites like that.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, their body shape, they display so much
fucking
water.
huge.
You know?
They do. They display so much
But
water.
a blue's tail, though,
Yeah.
like just the
bigger.
tail can leave a boil that
Oh,
big.
true.
That's what's
Yeah.
insane.
Definitely.
You know?
Yeah. I just feel like they can be sneakier sometimes. Like the bill will just come up.
Yeah, you don't-
and grab
Oh, yeah.
the lure down.
You don't
know?
necessarily
Totally.
know, and they're so
Yeah.
fast they come
Big
at
fish
you.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big fish can be
Like they'll time it, like the lure will come up, pop, come back down, and then all of a sudden you're on.
Yeah.
You're like what
a
the
lot
fuck
of
just
times
happened?
marlin will eat with their bill. Like they'll grab the lure with their bill and then eat it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the bill kind of plucks the lure and then they grab it, and that's why you don't really see anything.
Yeah.
You just see that. I've seen so many like slow mo videos where you and like this guy Brian Toney from Hawaii, he has like a lot of great underwater footage. But you see, if you watch his footage, you'll see a lot of those marlin will come up and they'll swipe the lure and then they'll eat it.
Yeah.
And
You
on
almost
the
get
surface,
slack in the leader, and then they take the lure down.
exactly.
Yeah.
And there's nothing. I bet you there's not a lot of disturbance up there. And then there's those bites where they just come in like
and plow
rocket
it.
ship.
Yeah.
And you just see that tail, sticking up like a dorsal fin.
Yeah. Those inside out bites, like when
Sick.
they're behind, and then all of a sudden it's just like perpendicular to the
They
spring.
go backwards.
Oh,
Like they turn and
dude,
go.
that gets me
immediately
going.
start greyhounding backwards.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
God, marlin their own beast, but giants on bars, giants on anything. I was just talking to
Kite bait, kite bites.
Kite bites are equally cool.
I was just talking to Justin, the Chattalures guy, about giants eating the bars and like how they eat sometimes they'll eat the hook bait and like part of their bite is they're going up the bar. Like it's like a behind up, they're eating multiple squids type of deal. Because their mouth is just fucking huge.
And then the bars just get literally turned inside out.
Oh.
Like the bar turns into like a fucking wine cork. Like I don't. It's like what happened to my 4-foot bar? It's like it's like size of a softball.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
it's amazing.
They tie those things up in knots, and then a lot of times they get away. Like I've lost a lot of fish too. 'Cause
On the bite.
on the bite,
worst.
on the bite, and it's because that's such a short leader. Your stinger's like a little 4 foot
Yeah.
leader.
Yeah.
So there's that shock just blows it out, and
And you have so many you think like Taylor and I know you fish multiple different types of bars and stuff, but when we specifically know we have a shot at catching like 100-incher on a bar, we've found it's insanely important to have that ahead of your bar, that lead line that comes up, your main line section, long enough so that from your hook to your snap swivel is longer than the bar can fold up, because you don't want the bar when it eats to fold up and then
the
hit
metal
hit
part.
your main line, then it's done.
good
Yeah.
point.
You know?
Yeah.
So we always make sure that 400 pound is like at least 11 feet long, 10, 11, 12
So when it
feet
comes
long.
tight, it's not on the
Yeah,
metal.
so when that bar, like he eats it, that bar is going to pick a way to go. If it's perfectly
fold in
balanced,
half.
it might fold in half. But then you have those sharp tips of your bar that are coming up to your 150 top shot, whatever. So having the 400 there is nice.
Yeah, it's not long. We have probably 2 feet of extra 400 above our bar.
Yeah.
It's just so like the wing of the bar can't
You
get
can actually
tangled
see
around.
it. That tail that's behind Taylor, you can see the snap swivel scar from where the main line attached to
spreader
the bar.
bar fish,
on a spreader bar, yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And that one, the bar, I'm like anal about making sure big bars can handle big fish. But like I was flossing my bars to the main line, like at the hub, and that bar folded in half and slid up the entire main line to the rod tip. And we got the bar back and we caught them just on the main line of squids.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was pretty sick. That bar's still fishing. That's still my
is.
short rigger bar.
That's so funny.
Oh,
that you
yeah.
kept it.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, some bars are worth keeping, man.
Trolling's amazing though. We had some really good days trolling on the bank. It was like back to early 2000s.
Yeah, kind of what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
That
I
influx-
prefer trolling. I mean, it you know what, and that really separates. That's something like when you can start trolling fish like that puts you in a different class than just the average, schmo that goes out there and drops a live mackerel down to the bottom.
There's so much art to it, and there's so much. You have to know the ins and outs of your boat. Like I bet you can hear a rigger clip go, and you know immediately how big that fish is by how hard it comes out of the rigger. Like that's how dialed you need to be be.
It is
good at
amazing the difference in sound just from the rigger clip of a big fish versus a small fish.
Yeah.
It's the rigger clip, and it's also the sound of the rod in the holder.
Moving.
The bang.
Yeah. Yep.
So on my boat, it's like a fucking shotgun. When a big fish, especially a blue, like when a marlin comes up and eats and eats the short, it's like that, that my outrigger kind of bounces because I have the clips tight, especially for the marlin. And then you hear the bang, and then just it's like a bang. And then that's when you look back and you see like, either a hole or something. But you're right though. Every boat's different.
Yeah.
I remember fishing down in Panama with Kid, and we were using a lot of dead baits, but we were circle hook fishing. And so we had light clips. So all you'd hear is like, pew,
Yeah.
And if you weren't paying attention, you would miss it every time. But literally you'd hear that little tiny little, and someone had to be on that rod to be dropping.
Yeah.
That's like the exact noise too. You nailed that fucking noise.
Yeah.
Like I think I heard that pitch and sailfish in Costa Rica quite a few times.
White marlin, same thing.
Yeah.
The kind of want to go back to your dead bait trolling. What's one tip? Actually, maybe you have a few tips that you would say like would separate you with dead bait trolling from someone else that's dead bait trolling for giants. What's something you put a lot of effort in?
Well, I definitely think the planer helps on days when, the bite is a little harder than other, sometimes it's a bloodbath and then you don't really need the planer because the planer can be an adversary because it's a pain in the ass and sometimes it can work against you, obviously. But I think, if, to take the time and run a big planer, down the middle, that's a big one, to get the baits down deep. And the other thing I think is just don't be afraid to like just take the boat out of gear, let the baits drop. I can't tell you how many bites I've gotten on the drop. Like the boat's not even moving. Most of the bites come because those baits are still going to swim. They're going to swim to the bottom basically. Like the tail's going to wag and the head of that Joe Shoot's going to pull the bait down. Mm-hmm. So it's just going to look like, a descending bait. So, that's a big one, especially if you're marking fish and they're underneath, they're down 80 feet, and you can't get them up.
So you're just sitting, you're literally putting in neutral and you're sitting for how long? For a minute.
And then you get in the bite when you come back in gear and pull it back on the drop.
We're getting the bite a lot on the drop.
That's pretty sick.
And I got bites on the bottom. I know I was on the bottom. I was marking fish down low, and I remember I had the Hasiotises with me, and we were fishing the Nantucket Big Game Battle, and we were like bluefin fishing because it was the first day was like super rough, and we were like, I was like, we'll go bluefin this day, and then we'll go canyon fishing the next day. We ended up bluefinning the whole time. And I mean, it was great fishing. I'm not going to lie. I had Nick and Anders with me, and I think we caught 11 giants trolling one day. We had a triple. We had a quad, and we lost one. We got 3. I mean, it was stupid fishing. That's so many fish. They looked like a school of Pogies. There was a school of giants. They were all like, 300-400 pounders. They weren't massive, but all half mooning and just pushing. And I remember being on the tower like a little kid, like, oh my God, like I wish I had my really good video cam. But anyways, we would swing in front of them and then drop the baits back. And but then the fish went down, and I knew they were still there. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to try to, target them on the bottom. And I remember letting the damn things drop, and it was like, at least a minute. And then all of a sudden, they'd be slacking the line, like you literally. So I think the baits were near the bottom or on the bottom, and then we got bit.
That's awesome. Yeah, you think your line's sinking and your bait's coming down, like it's just basically going to look completely slacked out.
I mean, for a full minute, it's
got to be close.
What's that? A 3 or 4 ounce bait? Yeah, it's got to be 100 feet back. Are you going reverse at all? Are you just sitting?
I use the 8 ounce shoots too.
Oh wow!
Oh yeah,
I do. I use the 8. I mean, I like the little. I like the 3s and the 5s, but we'll always have an 8. It's funny because Mark DeCabia like hates the 8s.
He does,
and he's always like, "Oh,
3's all you need."
And like I remember doing a seminar, years ago, and Mark and I we usually like combine a talk. I'll do a half hour, he'll do. So I spent like a half hour talking about like Joe Shoot fishing, and I'm like, I really like the 8 ounce because it sinks. And then Mark gets up and he's like, I would never use an 8 ounce. You'd lose all your fish if you went in with an 8 ounce. I'm like, that's where you're going first next time.
I can see though, like the 8 ounce kind of sucking for like yellows and big eyes, and they're coughing and like they have a smaller tail beat. But like on a big 800 pounder, dude.
No.
Like
exactly.
It's the thing's not shaking around all that much.
No.
And
it really does help get that bait down.
Yeah.
And it helps that bait sink when you do take it out of gear. And a lot of times too, if you make a hard turn, the outside bait will come shooting up to the surface, and we do get bites doing that too. Big eye, you know, when we're going over big eye, like that's like big eye fishing. I honestly think it's even more important to take the boat out of gear and let the stuff drop. And a lot of times I'll have a marlin lure, I'll have the moneymaker chain, and all that stuff sinks and looks like shit.
Yeah.
But those shoots are swimming nice, and that's why I do it, you know?
Yeah.
The shoots. Let's talk about colors, because everybody nerds out on colors. If you had one color that you felt like had to be in the spread all the time on a ballyhoo for a giant bluefin, or maybe one you would use the rest of your life, what's the color?
Definitely the red-headed slut.
Yeah.
So redhead
or
with crystal skirt.
Yep.
Do you think there's a theory? So my theory with this crystal skirt is no matter how that ballyhoo's swimming, it looks kind of the same.
Kind of looks like because the crystal, replicates the side of a fish, a pogie,
Squid.
a ballyhoo, a squid, or, it's just a nice loud profile in the water. But I'll be honest with you, I've caught fish on all the colors. Like, I've tried green, I've tried black and purple, pink. Joe sent me up a bunch of these lanterns, he calls them. It's like a rubber skirt mixed with so the inner skirt's rubber and then the outer skirt's hair. And those work great too.
Yeah.
So I don't even think the color's that important. But I've just, it's like don't fix it if it ain't broken kind of thing.
Yeah.
We've caught a lot of fish on the red-headed slut. A lot.
Caught like pretty much every species on that red-headed slot.
Everybody has.
Yeah.
Honestly, and Joe sells a ton of them.
Yeah.
But I've also, like I said, I've caught them on a lot of different colors. So,
yeah.
So no matter what species, you'd pretty much be going for that color.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good color. Yeah.
Interesting. You fish, you ever fish Joe shoots on the planer for giants? Or you pretty much always fishing a naked bait?
No, I've fished Joe shoots on the planer. Absolutely. That's a big Carolina trick. The boys down there, that's where I learned it. Fishing down there when I used to charter boats out of like Beaufort and even out of Hatteras in like the 90s, crushing fish. And it's funny because that's, they all were fishing Joe shoots before us.
Yeah.
And I don't even think I started fishing Joe shoots until I had Scotty with me, and it was like maybe 2003 or 4. And I was like, hey, we got to try these Joe shoot lures. They're like an Islander, but they're heavier. We were throwing them back there, and they were getting eaten, and they were out fishing the naked baits.
Yeah.
Because at the time, Chatham was still a troll fishery, and everybody was trolling naked ballyhoo. And I don't think many guys were trolling the shoots back then.
I've still yet to catch a giant on a shoot on the bank. We've caught them on naked ballyhoos.
Yes.
But not on a skirted ballyhoo.
Really?
Caught small ones on the
70 inches.
Yeah.
Like just shy of giants. But we also, how many times have we really put the time in trolling with dead baits? It's always squid bars with maybe a dead bait or two.
It brings me to my next question.
Yeah.
So if you had a week, no charters, you had a week of weather in the canyons to yourself.
Unlimited funds.
Like with your current program, but like unlimited funds for tackle and tactics. What's a tactic that you haven't spent a lot of time doing in the canyons that like in the back of your head, you're like, that would definitely work. Like I'd be able to dial that in if I spent some time, and it would be really creative and innovative.
Well, I gotta talk my mates into rigging natural dredges.
Oh my God.
Because I'll tell you what was a really learning curve for me is when I went and fished the Mid-Atlantic a couple years ago. I had some clients that were good friends of mine that were like let's go fish it, and it was not cheap, and so it was a lot of pressure to try to make that work. It was like $30,000 nut to go fish that thing with Calcuttas and everything, and actually, it was more than that. What am I thinking? I think it was like with the Calcuttas, it might have been $50,000. It was a crazy amount of money. But those boats down there, I was right in the middle of it, and on rigging day, and I mean rigging day was like the Super Bowl. Like every boat had a rigging station with a roof on it. A lot of them, tents, hoses, coolers, trays, ice. floss, everything. And they were rigging natural dredges like it was like mandatory. Yeah. Every boat. And I was like the only idiot from the Northeast that like had a bunch. And I thought I was prepared with like my artificial dredges, from Squid Nation. And don't get me wrong, they're good dredges. I think they definitely help. But those guys were so adamant about rigging natural dredges. And I know it helps. I mean, think about it. If you're a fish and you're looking up and you have all that scent in the water
100%.
And scales falling off it. And so, and I have fished natural dredges. I fished the BBC one year and I had a local guy show me how to do it. And he had like holes up and down his hands from the pins, from the pin rigs. And it's no joke. Like you basically, when you're rigging a natural dredge, you're going to put holes in your thumbs. But if to answer your question, I would love to dial in, trying different dredge patterns, mixing in artificials, a mix with like some mullet and even some ballyhoo. I mean, I'd love to rig a ballyhoo dredge. The only problem with a ballyhoo dredge, I think, is that they're not as tough as a mullet. And we found when we were fishing the BBC, the mahi did a number on our bellies. So we were trolling ballyhoo dredges down there, and the mahi would come in and just 30-pound mahi would just shred the fucking things. And that's the only problem with doing that. But I would love to try that at the canyons, is try natural dredges, pitching. Obviously I'd love to get the guys dialed in on that. The pitch game is very as you guys know from fishing down south too, it's a meticulous game. You really got to have, like, when you're slow trolling with a dredge and you got the circle hooks, you got to assign a guide to a rod or two rods. A lot of the mates down there literally stand with the rods and free spool clickers on with their hands on, and they just stand like this on the rocket launcher. Mm-hmm. One guy on the left side, one guy on the right side, one guy in the corner, another guy, and there's like four guys literally just like this waiting for the bite. We don't do that. We're high speed trolling at 9 knots, covering ground, and that's the other thing. Our canyons, let's face it, you got to find the fish half the time. And sometimes we'll spend an entire day. That's why it's nice to have an overnighter, because you got a second shot. I can't tell you how many times the sun's going down on day one and we haven't got shit, and it's like, fuck. And then the next morning it's just a bloodbath, and it's like, thank God I found the fish in the dark. So it's to slow it down and do the dredge thing, I would love, it takes time because you got to be on the fish. So that's what I would do probably, is just,
play around the
natural baits and do the pitch thing. And I'm not a huge fan of white marlin fishing. I'm not going to lie. I'd rather catch a big striper than catch a white marlin. Yeah. But when you're tournament fishing and you need points, and you already have a blue or whatever, that all it takes is that white marlin to put you over to the top. And the boats that go out and target them and can catch 5, 6, 7, 8 whites, like down in the mid-Atlantic, the boats that won were boats that had white marlin. They might have had a blue in there too, but it was, the white marlin helps, and obviously you need one to win the big prize down there. But
that'd be sweet. I think your blue marlin bites would increase even more too with some big profile mullet dredges and all that, like just lazy fish that are full. I think it would just be like that, like Seth was saying, that extra 20% that ends up paying out 50% of the time.
Yeah. I mean, the amount of money that you'd spend getting there.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
A lot.
It's the other thing too, like the to rig a natural dredge, I mean, the mullet alone are pretty big money. I think they're like, $6, $7 a piece, $8 a piece, and you're talking 25 baits or whatever, so, but I told Christian at Falmouth Bait and Tackle, I'm like, you want to get like a cool little revenue stream going. You ought to spend a winter, build a bunch of these natural dredges, build the stringers for them so guys can swap them out, and then sell them. And I bet you guys will, pay $250 or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Especially before a tournament.
Yeah.
Because not everyone has the time to like tell a mate, like, go rig, it's rigging day today.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Good luck with that.
And you just got back from a canyon trip the night before.
I'm going to tell Billy Shouldice, who has 2 kids, married with 2 kids, a full-time job. It's rigging day. He's going to be like, go fuck yourself.
Know what I think would work? Call me crazy, but Max wouldn't work down there. They would just like, even salting, using the process that you said, and
Disintegrate.
they would disintegrate. But what about pogies? Like they have a big bony head.
Can you rig
They
them
kind of
like
have a
mullet?
similar skeletal structure to a mullet.
They're a little taller.
You
though.
could take the backbone out and butterfly them.
They might be too tall, and they might catch because they're more like a.
But those fucking mud flap things do the same thing.
Yeah, they go on their side.
Why
and
not
shit.
swivel rig them and do the exact same thing? Like they're going to be like, even if you just put lead in their mouth, like they have that big gullet.
That's true. I guess if you're not afraid of letting it swim laterally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
know?
you can make it so it doesn't spin.
As long as there's a little
probably.
lead in his
it just
mouth,
might go on its
tucked
side.
under his tongue, he's not going to spin.
Yeah,
You know,
he would maybe lay on his side.
And
flutter.
all the mass from that bait is in the head. Like their head is a third of their body.
True.
You know?
and you could probably, I mean, you may be able to wedge them too.
Think about how long, excuse
And
me.
they're pretty hardy.
Yeah,
They
like
are
how
hard.
long Pete Belson keeps a cooler full of salted pogies before they turn red eye.
Yeah, it's a
Now
long
think
time.
about doing that with formaldehyde and a shit ton of salt. Like I think you'd be able to get 4
Why aren't we
hours.
rigging swimming pogies on the bank? That's what I'm talking about.
So before I forget, one thing I have done is rigged a herring to I've trolled herring with a little egg sinker, and they swim beautifully because they're so limber.
Yeah,
A dead herring swims perfect. The only thing is, it's a slow troll, and they do wash out after like an hour. But man, do they look sexy! I mean, just awesome. And you
Herring's
just
my
put the
favorite
hook
bait.
right outside instead of trying to bury the hook like you would in a ballyhoo.
Yeah.
You just put the hook like this on the herring's head with a little zip tie, and they swim awesome.
Sick.
I would see. I can't. Unless I was fishing the bank, down in Chatham. Like there's. I haven't seen a herring down there in like 5 years. But you guys get those big giant
you got
like
some
herring that are
absolute
full of roe.
hammers. This
Oh
year.
my god.
Those are awesome baits too.
There is a couple days where there was jumbos up on Middlebank and the sharks got bad.
Oh yeah.
So we were getting baits up there and then bringing them to the corner where like the true herring biomass was when the sharks got bad up north, and it was automatic.
Really?
Yeah, it was like
Yeah, all baby herring on the southwest.
yeah. But you brought one of those big ones down there. At 60
Interesting.
feet, it was an instant bite.
Those herring have been there for a while.
Yeah.
A few years now.
Yep.
The Middlebank herring, I find.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I keep hearing about. Yeah, because I remember when I did fish up there a couple years ago, there were tons of those herring. The fucking squid were tough though.
They haven't been bad the last 2 years. That 3 years ago when it was bananas with squid,
Was
it was
hard.
bad.
It was tough, especially when you had those big herring.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, we were pretty much just fishing one herring and 2 squids.
That's our game plan every morning when we hit the bank. Like the herring schools is our bread and butter fishing for the most part.
Yeah. Find the schools.
Yeah, and sometimes it's spread on the edge, sometimes it's up on the shoal, sometimes it's like legitimately 100-yard ball of herring, and if you aren't on that ball of herring, you're not going to hook up.
It's like anywhere else.
Yeah.
The when you're trolling these, I keep going back to this because I think the listeners will find it interesting.
Yeah.
What are you finding is like the sweet spot for like leaders and stuff like that for trolling dead baits?
Length of leader.
Yeah, like length and like you don't need to go crazy because I know, your seminar is going to have a lot of this. It's going to have everything in this. But, what would you say if someone was going to go out and like try dead bait fishing? What should they get for like basic materials?
Well, I personally would recommend using fluoro.
Yeah.
Not just because of the the aesthetics, but for the durability. But again, when you're on the troll, it's less important. The fisher, you're on the move. I don't think the fisher is shy because a lot of times when you're on the troll, you're away from other boats. So we don't worry about going too light. I like to fish like 180. And you just don't want to go too heavy on the troll because I feel like 220 would start to impede the action of the bait. Yeah. Especially on like a Joe shoot, something light. A mackerel, some of the horse mackerel we troll, they're jumbos, and we get like a 6-ounce egg sinker. You could probably troll whatever you want. You could troll 300-pound mono on that. But yeah, I would do 180 fluoro. I like the Mustad stainless hooks, the 7691s, S's for stainless. Those are good hooks. I like the Pakula makes a hook. It's a short shank stainless hook. It's not cheap, but they're really, really good hooks, and they're a good bait hook. They're good for we use them in the Ballyhoo and stuff. And I like them because the shank of the hook's shorter, so the throat of the hook can come out of the bait a little more forward than usual, so you have more meat behind the hook to wag.
Wiggle, yeah.
Yeah, because you got to be careful because I go over this at the seminar. In fact, I'm going to do a talk on this topic about tropical bluefin. Yeah, actually, because there's a lot of new guys getting into the sport, and might as well try to do it right. And I've learned the hard way what doesn't work, but I find that the baits that are wagging better seem to get more bites, and I feel like the further forward your hook comes out, the better presentation you have. And don't worry about getting a short bite. With these giants, like we were saying earlier, they have mouths the size of trash cans. They're not gonna nibble at the tail of the ballyhoo. The thing's gonna get inhaled. So, but yeah, the short shank Pakula hooks are good. The quick point makes a good one. VMC has a southern style. They call it a southern tuna hook. It's stainless. All 9/0. Size 9/0 that's what we like to use for the horse ballyhoo. But yeah, horse ballyhoo too, usually big presentation. Yep.
I like those short shank hooks. Actually, Turbo, when we first started fishing with him, basically when he was fishing with you a lot, got us. We were using 11-0 and 12-0 salt waters in our naked ballyhoo, split bill ballyhoos, just because that short shank, where the leader comes off the eye of the hook, it's way more of it's a less abrupt angle. So you're not coming out of the long shank and then coming up to the bill. It's just a nice gradual angle of the leader. And I feel like they dig better, and they, to your point, there's more meat behind the hook, so they wag like crazy.
Yeah.
Sometimes
we'll put the J hook, we call it freestyle. We'll put the hook outside the bait completely. And I think Nick's done it with me a bunch. I know I've done it a lot with Anders, Maddie, Billy, where we put that big fish we trolled up it was years ago, probably 9 years ago now when Maddie was with me. I had Maddie and Billy, and we got 115 incher out of Chatham, and that was on a naked ballyhoo, but we had the hook on the top of the head. You know what I mean? So almost like you'd rig a ballyhoo with a circle hook, with some wire and the egg sinker, except the hook was completely outside the bait, and now you got a whole horse ballyhoo just swimming perfectly. Some days it doesn't matter. If you have a Joe Shoot skirting it, I'm less concerned about that. But when you're fishing a naked bait, I like to have that thing so you just see green. I always tell my mates, you see green in the wash, send it. If you don't,
re-rig it. And you can also switch, tactics doing it that way too. If you got 4 130s with live bait leaders and those Pakula hooks on, and you're putting live mackerels down, all it takes is, take the live baits off and then floss your ballyhoos on.
True.
You don't need to recrimp everything and swap hooks. It's, if you're trying to minimize the amount of different terminal tackle you use.
Yeah, we do it. We've done it with the ballyhoo and the mackerel and stuff the same way. We just Costa Rica style, egg sinker, floss, put the hook through the X and
exactly.
And, we'll troll for a little bit with our live bait leaders and then switch over, or vice versa. We'll throw something out.
Yep.
And troll midday after bait fishing.
Speaking of Costa Rica, just to change topics a little bit, you're heading to Belize soon?
Heading to Belize a week from today.
What's the game plan down there?
Well, I'm going with the girlfriend, and we're gonna probably do some fishing. She actually likes to fish, so it's not like when I was married and I went on my honeymoon and I sucked my wife into fishing for 4 days, and then she got baptized with tuna blood in the chair. Literally, they brought this beautiful. I mean, it was a nice yellow. It was probably 180-pound yellowfin. We were marlin fishing, and of course, the guys all saw it. They're like, "Oh my God, it's an ahi!" And they bring the thing and she's in the chair. And so, she's all excited. I'm like, wow, that's a great fish. Let's check it out. And they bring the fish into the boat, just over the gunnel. And they bring out this wooden bat that's right out of The Walking Dead. And they just start hammering this fucking fish, and blood's flying, and it's going all over her. And she's painted, and she's trying to get out of the chair. And she's like, let me out. That was like welcome to the world of being married to a fish nut. But no, the girl I'm going with though, she loves to fish. Like we got a couple of giants last year, and she loved it. I mean, she was on the rod a lot of the time, but we're going to Belize, and believe it or not, I don't know if you guys fly fish. I've never fly fished, and so I'm gonna actually bring a fly rod down there and try to get some bonefish, permit, and maybe a tarpon. I've been to Belize once. I went like 20 years ago, and we actually fished in the jungle. We went to the Belize River Lodge. I went with my brother, and it's like a lodge in up this river, basically in Belize, in like the rainforest. And a lot of times they take the Pogies and they come out of the lodge and they take a right, and you fish like the river mouth where it meets the ocean. Well, one day I told the guide, I'm like, it was kind of slow, and I'm like, I really want to catch a tarpon. Like, isn't there a place we can go? And he's like, well, there's a long boat ride, senor. And I was like, let's go. So we go into the jungle like Apocalypse Now. Like we went up 3 hours. I shit you not, 3 hours in a Ponga doing like 20 knots. All the way up this jungle, just making turns and going by like these waterfall, like rapids. We got to this place where it was all rapids, and there were tarpon rolling. They weren't huge. They were all like 40, 60 pounders, but they were everywhere, and they were in the rapids. It was like trout fishing.
That's sick.
And they were, and my brother is a fly rod enthusiast, so he was
feather merchant.
Heaven.
A feather merchant. Yeah.
A feather merchant. I love it. I always tell him, like, those fish you catch, put them in my lap. But I remember like hooking fish though in the rapids and being like, I wish I had a camera. But that was cool. So I'll be back there. We're going to an island called Ray Cay, which is I don't know if you guys are familiar with Belize, but it's got like a barrier reef, kind of like Australia, and it goes from like 18 feet to like 600, I'm hoping to maybe bring a small plugging rod and maybe try to get some small yellowfin. I hear there's a bunch of wahoo down there that you can catch casting, and then maybe some tarpon fishing, and probably I'll do some fly fishing and probably hook my ear or something. But yeah,
it's like a rite of passage.
Yeah. The reason why we bust fly fishermen's balls is we can't fly fish.
Oh, I don't have the patience for it.
I've tried it. And I've caught a few fish doing it, but it's very difficult.
Is it really?
It is.
I didn't want to hear that.
You know what? You can get a fly like, 20, 30 yards maybe when you like first start getting going with it. But like, then you watch like a real guy do it. And they can cast as far as you could cast a spinning rod almost.
Yeah.
Is that right?
It's insane. Maybe not,
Takes a few,
Oh, it takes a while, yeah. And you think as soon as you start thinking you're getting good at it, it's like golfing. Like all of a sudden you just start to suck again.
Yeah. One little thing's off, and you're not able to get
you're thinking too much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's I would like to do it on a paddleboard just because I think it would be cool to be all stealth, around fish. Like say you see a school of permit and you're on a paddleboard, you're not making a sound,
Yeah.
There's and like I think a fly rod would be great, but knowing me, I'll probably wipe out and like get a concussion or something in the then have to be airlifted out of Belize.
Tourist flown home after a fly fishing accident.
Right.
A woolly bugger got stuck in his eye.
Yeah. He did a willy bugger removed from his earlobe. This episode is brought to you by Rodan Marine Systems. This past season, we partnered up with Rodan Marine. They produce extremely high quality trolling motors / GPS anchors. We have a 30-foot center console. It's actually a 2801 Parker with a bracket. Considered a large center console. And we do a ton of anchor fishing. We fish on anchor a lot inshore in the rivers and inshore waters around the South Shore of Massachusetts and throughout Cape Cod Bay. Live bait fishing for striped bass. We also fish on anchor a ton, I would say 75% of the time while we're offshore tuna fishing, live bait fishing, we're on anchor. So having the ability to quickly stop the boat, deploy an anchor, and not have to use, 400 feet of anchor line and deal with swing on a tide change and not easily being able to reposition, it's kind of a no-brainer for us to reach out to Rodan and see if they would be interested in putting one of their trolling motors on our boats. We've been fortunate enough to use Rodans down in Florida with a couple of our buddies who have actually been on the podcast, Jason Stock and Dave White, and we were extremely impressed by them when we used them on their boats, and their boats are of comparable size to ours. So we ended up getting, thanks to Rodan, we ended up getting their 36-volt HD GPS trolling motor with the 96-inch shaft. It seemed to be the right size, right fit for our center console, and the thing is just unbelievable. We were able to put it into the test in a variety of sea conditions. We found that, anything, a consistent 2 to 4 foot chop, as long as the wind isn't super, super gusty, we were not moving. Like, our position did not change throughout the day, throughout a tide change. It really was, or is, truly incredible. So just a couple of things. We gave this thing a full season before, we wanted to give a testimonial for it. There's a lot of different, crazy products on the market. Technology's come a long way, and, we really want to see if this thing could hold up to our charter season and the elements up here in the Northeast. And it really impressed us. So we installed the motor ourselves, just Taylor, myself, and our new mate, Ben, kid that worked for us in the 2022 season, and hopefully will be with us for years to come. We installed it ourselves. We decided to go with a 36-volt lithium battery. It's lighter than lead acid. It requires less storage space. You don't need as many batteries. And we're actually able to get 12 plus hours of runtime before we needed to charge, which is crazy. We charge every day after each trip, but if we had doubles or double inshore trips or anything like that, we really didn't have to worry about it. So some of the situations and really benefits that we found of using a spot lock trolling motor, GPS anchor, trolling motor, specifically Rodan, where tide changes, there's no swing. So if you have several hundred feet of anchor line and you're positioned on a piece of bottom, there's really no movement. There is no movement at all on a tide change, so you can stay in the sweet spot for longer. The other thing is wind against tide. So, when they're opposite each other, it's hard to send baits out. We have little tricks that we use to try to get baits away from the boat in that situation, but it's often difficult, and many times you're only fishing or able to fish one rod. So with the trolling motor anchor, on the center console, we could still fish 3 rods off the bow and have a full spread, and it helped us get more bites. Absolutely. Both inshore and offshore. The support, I think, is the most impressive and most important thing with Rodan. Salt water is a harsh environment. Charter fishing, you're beating your equipment up pretty good. I'm sure any other charter captains listening to this can attest to that. Everything breaks, and you got to fix a lot of stuff yourself in order to, keep going through the season and keep going trip to trip. So if we ever had an issue, which we had a couple of minor wear and tear issues, Rodan overnighted us parts. Their support is unbelievable. Easy to fix and modify things on your own. Just a great product. So we wanted to give a honest testimonial of the product, and we're really impressed. So if you're interested in adding a Rodan to your boat for this next season, you can visit rodanmarine.com, and you'll see the entire lineup of their trolling motors and GPS anchors, all different shaft lengths, voltages, and we think you'll be impressed. So check them out. It will definitely be a game changer in the way that you fish on anchor.
Speaking of reef fishing, by the way, have you guys seen these videos that are online? I bet you've seen them, where guys are standing on a reef. They're like, waiting on a coral reef, and they're casting hooking like big dogtooth tuna
Yes.
and yellowfin from the reef.
Yes, I watched it. I watched one
this yet.
yesterday. I think
It's
it's like these reef cliffs, and
in
they're
Saudi
like waiting
Arabia.
on the break basically.
Oh, dude, shark heaven? Are you kidding me?
shark
Catching
heaven,
like toad yellowfin,
toad yellows,
dogtooths.
dogtooths, and like big GTs. It's definitely in. I think it's the Red Sea because I followed one guy and I started reading some of his posts and he was Saudi Arabian, and I think it's like the south part of the Red Sea is where they're fishing that, and it's just like they're standing on these coral reefs, and it just drops off into the abyss, man. It's like blue water, I mean,
They're dragging like 100-pound yellowfins like up
That's
the rocks
savage.
and stuff.
it's crazy.
Pretty cool.
But they're like in water. Like, I don't know how they get out. I think you just walk out from the beach and you walk out like whatever, a quarter mile. That's just all coral reef. And they're, they got gloves and boots and all this like hardware and like, they look like commandos, fishing commandos.
Right.
And they go out there and they just sling poppers and stuff. And one guy was dropping a jig down. That's the last one I saw where he just like slung
Waiting
it.
and dropping a jig down.
Yes, exactly. He was like, wait, and he's like, he's like, hey, there's some nice doggies right here. I think, and he just throws the things like, and he just lets it sink for like 30 seconds. Then he goes tight on the drop and catches this like 80-pound dogtooth.
Unbelievable.
I got to find out where the hell that is.
Sounds like we need to do a boys trip.
Is dogtooth the only one you have left? The only tuna
I
you
would
have left?
love to catch a dogtooth. That's the only tuna. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That looks like a badass fish, man. I
Totally.
would love to catch one of those.
They're almost like a king mac and like
Yes.
an albacore mixed together.
They have that king mackerel profile.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
seem like
Same
they
skin
fight
on it.
way harder than most of the tunas.
Yeah.
For their size. Like it's almost like an amberjack mixed with a tuna, which
Yeah.
sounds fucking
And they
frightening. Sounds
Right.
terrifying.
And they just look mean, man.
Oh,
They
yeah.
got like choppers and like,
yeah.
they're streamlined.
Sick.
Yeah.
That's cool. Belize is, I think the barrier reef there is like it's like the second or third largest barrier reef in the world or something.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise
think
me
so.
because that makes sense. It's a huge reef, and it's weird because Belize is shallow right up to the reef, and it's like 20 miles offshore of the mainland, and then it just drops. And then I tell you, I'd love to fish out there and troll. I'm sure the bill fishing's good. I know it's right at the reef. It's not great, but as you get out like 30 miles, there's another bank out there, and I guess it's very untapped from what I hear.
That's
There's
cool.
not a lot of pressure.
So he says he's going there with a fly rod. I bet you he has a suitcase of like Select and Dink Ballyhoo. with like,
Yeah.
I'm definitely
Slick's gonna bring him a mullet dredge to bring down there.
yeah, mullet dredge on the paddleboard.
right. I'll try it.
He's at home tonight painting fucking squids on the
On the bottom of the paddleboard. Oh, yeah.
Right. I'll have a makeshift like center rigger. Oh
yeah.
I hold.
Giving it to your girlfriend. Hold this.
Right.
Hold it tight. The clip has to pop. Don't let it drop.
Right.
That's so funny. Oh, that's awesome.
That's cool.
So you got Belize. Any other trips, or is it Belize then basically to the seminar?
Belize seminar, and then going to Puerto Vallarta. My buddy's got a house down there, and he's got a friend of his that has like a panga, like a big one, like a 24-footer, and we're going to go to like the bank and do some day trips. I mean, that's a cool fishery down there if you can get to like the Maria Islands where I went last time for the big yellows. But sometimes the fishing, 40 miles out is really good too. So I'm hoping that there'll be, I don't care if there's cows around. I just want to be able to sling some poppers, and I just love casting for tuna. It's so much fun. It really
so
is.
funny.
I think it's so cool how everyone that we know that fishes and travels and fishes up here. I feel like when you go travel somewhere, you want to do something completely different
That's
than where
why
you're
you
doing
asked
at
that
home.
question.
Yeah.
It's like you want you want a natural dredge fish.
Yeah.
Like,
Right, because we don't do it.
We don't do it.
I've never done that up here, ever. I've never put my mate through that hell and said, like, rig a natural dredge. I'll see you later. I'm going to have dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell you what is interesting talking to this, kind of bring it all together, but talking to Sean Rotella from Hawaii. When he's bumping around with live baits, he's fishing 2 dredges. He's putting dredges like behind the boat. They're down, but they're just kind of fluttering along and making profiles, and he's fishing his live baits behind him.
So my guess is if he is doing that, is he using ribbon dredges? What kind of dredges?
Everything. He does strip teaser stuff. He does he's done our squid stuff that we used to make him in the past. He's
not picky. He just
no.
Because I would think you'd want
whatever.
light, if you're doing that, slow chugging like that, you'd want something really light that's not, because anything too heavy is just going to kind of
sink straight
down. Because I know when I troll with the trolling valves on with lag baits, even like skipjack, we got to be pretty slow or they just get the baits just wear out, But if we're doing 2 knots or under, they'll last all day.
And I don't think he's putting them that far back either.
Yeah.
I don't think he's putting them like dredge spacing where you get that clean pocket. I think he's more like halfway.
Well, he probably also doesn't want his Apello to swim into the dredges.
Right.
He wants them out back behind him. Those baits are badass, by the way.
Oh, imagine some of those
They're
baits
like
up here.
Scad mackerel, like hardtail. They're sick baits.
Yeah.
When we did the manta ray dive with him, snorkeling at night trying to see manta rays, the Apello getting the lights, and we were catching them on sabiki. So I wasn't even looking for manta rays. I was like watching to see how the bait reacted to the sabiki rigs underwater. It was pretty cool.
That's funny.
They use they don't even use flashers or anything. All they fish
hooks.
he's probably gonna kill me for saying this, but just little gold trout hooks.
Yeah.
That's
and
it.
they go after the hook.
That's it. Just hooks.
Funny. They just see the flash.
Yeah. But like feathers, he's like they won't really eat it. Like it just has to
No
be just
kidding.
the hook. Yeah.
Weird.
That
Yeah.
is weird.
Fishing's weird.
Just to say one more thing about dredge fishing before we keep going on.
Yep.
And tactics we want to try. And you and I have talked about this. I think it would be sweet to make stationary dredges. Like on a polyball, 3-tier, incorporate like blade spinners and stuff to it.
Right.
And then once you find the fish, actually like deploying them, you need some sort of sea condition.
Dude.
But imagine those things going up and down in the swell and just creating flash and just looking like little bait
some
balls.
squid.
And then you're trolling around it, creating disturbance,
Like putting a fad out.
I was just
as
going to
soon as
say,
you
it's like
hook
a
it.
fad.
like a drift
Because
fad.
we talked about doing this at night in the canyons. We're drifting for swordfish and yellowfin and big eyes and stuff. Having either float like a whole big profile of floating squids, artificial squids, like just in your lights, or having a big, dredge or a combination of whatever just off the side of your boat, just as an attracting. Because these, all these game fish are coming up just to check stuff up and they see your bait.
Mm-hmm. Or dangle a couple sabiki rigs from the bottom of it too. Like have the dredge with a couple sabiki drops with leads, then you hook a couple,
couple little blue runners out there.
This sounds insane.
It sounds insane, dude, but seriously, think about that.
I know.
Well, you know what?
There's so much to be improved in all this.
When I was fishing with Dean Panos in Miami years ago, he used to take a squid and he'd rig the squid with a hook, and then he'd tie like a blue runner above the hook bait. Just a flossed blue runner to the main line, and the blue runner would just pull the squid around. Oh. And so the blue runner not only would pull the squid and make it look like it was alive, but it would also attract a sword or whatever, and he would get bites doing that. I mean, and I've never tried that, but that's something.
Such a good idea.
It's a great idea, but that's the kind of shit that innovative thinking that and most people would be like, that's fucking crazy,
Right?
What the fuck, but stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes revolutionizes.
I want to try the night drifting dredge thing. So if anyone's screwing around the canyons this year out there, put some like floating spread of bars, link them together, do whatever you need to do to make this big like bait profile surface thing in your lights, just to see what happens.
I think
what the fuck comes up.
So down in Panama, we noticed the commercial longline boats when they're out, not pulling lines, they're just kind of putting around. Mm-hmm. They all have trees tied to the side of them, and I'm talking like big trees, like 80 foot by or 60 foot by like 50 foot wide, tied together branches and debris, and they just slow troll this these wooden structures, and they attract sardines. And they literally create like an ecosystem. And I'm sure like one guy probably tried it, or maybe even just picked up some trash one night and like had it dangling from his boat and noticed, wow, look at all the sardines. And next thing you know, they're all pulling these fucking trees. And it took me a while to figure it out, because I was like, what the hell? And then I saw a guy reaching with this long dip net, grabbing the sardines like 10 at a time and just throwing them into the live well.
Huh.
And
that's pretty wild.
They were using, so again, this whole... So we thought we were crazy.
Picture right now is guys in the canyons throwing around fucking oak trees. Right? You know, like I'm going to hydro. I got a fresh pine I just fucking cut down.
Right. Everyone saves their Christmas trees. You know.
It makes sense. It's like the perfect structure, you know,
Dude,
piece of
drifting at night
flotsam
with a
for 'em.
fucking tree off the side of your boat.
Yeah.
What are we doing wrong here?
I don't
And
know.
it's like when my brother and I were kids, and my dad we had this turn the knob like hockey game that we used to play, and my brother got pissed because I won in overtime or something. He threw the puck at me, and it like went whizzing by my head. I remember hearing it. It was like, phew, fucking went right into this giant pictured glass window that we had in our living room. It was like double pane glass. You know, and the puck went through one pane, but not the other, and then fell straight down. It left a perfect hole. So we pulled the curtain, and we had it hiding for like, you know, a month. My dad didn't know. And then one day he was like doing something. And he's like, I could hear him. He's like, what the fuck? Right? And so right away, I'm like, JP did it. You know? So he's like, that hockey. He picks up the game, and he walks out. We lived on this pond in Arlington. He tosses the game right in the lake behind the house. And next thing you know, there was like a big bass hanging out by it. And so my brother and I made this artificial reef. We were throwing bikes and all kinds of shit. And then it was great. It was like our private little hole.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I think the fad thing is interesting because, you know, the only problem with the canyons is obviously the depth, and then you get the commercial guys, right? And I feel like they get pissed off when they see, you know, something unmarked that, you know, this shouldn't be here. And I'm afraid, like, you know, you spend all that money and time, and then
It's got to be safe at the end of the day. Like, you don't want to kill somebody.
Yeah, totally. But if you had drift fads and you were on the break and found the fish and deployed them and then just kind of keep working with them as they drift in the current, I think it would work. Just whether or not it would have enough soak time to build life.
They got to marinate. Yeah, I feel like, like remember the buoys? I don't know, like a few years ago, the buoys had a ton of yellowfin and billfish and skipjack, but they also were sitting, you know, for years. They had a coral reef on the chain. The chain was like, you know, Lou DeFusco was telling me, because he was diving with a client of his, you know, free diving and spearfishing. There was like a reef on the chain that was like, you know, several feet wide.
Wow.
And then it had just a whole ecosystem of everything. And I feel like, you know, something like that, where if you could set a fad and just walk away and it might be able to make it through an entire season, that would be a huge, you know, attracting device.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, you know, how do you make it so that it's, I mean, say if you could do a subsurface one,
Yeah.
so that, you know, it's deep enough that it's not going to interfere with anybody's running gear. The problem is, I just wonder about, like, you know, weather and wear and tear, and you know, you're going to need a big ass mushroom anchor, and whose boat are you taking it out in? You know, I mean,
Yeah.
We should shoot this shit with Jason about his whole reef project and maybe combine thoughts on that.
I know.
He's got a lot of cool structures going in the water.
You're wondering if you could do it locally too. Like, I know we're talking about the canyons a lot, but I'm unaware of any like fads east of Chatham or east of the bank. Like, why couldn't you go out at Wildcat and deploy something? And
I know.
you know, is that gonna?
But you'd think like the tunas and all that would be on the buoys. Like they are on the
I
buoys.
feel like sometimes they might.
Sometimes they are, but not like. It's not like
You're talking
trolling
about bluefin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's not like you're trolling by like, you know, one of the buoys on the bank and like it's an insta bite, or like the weather buoy that's just to the west of where we like
I feel
to
like they're in
fish.
weird
Same thing.
spots, but yeah.
You know.
it all comes down to whether or not the bait would congregate around, like, would mackerel congregate around a buoy? They do around the sea buoy outside the canal.
True.
You know what I mean? I think if the bait's there, the fish will be there. It all
Yeah.
comes down. Like in the blue water, I feel like, you know, everything loves structure. Mahi, those little jacks, the triggerfish. You know what I mean? They see I mean, I've trolled by pieces of floating, you know. One time we had there was a sheet in the water that was floating, and it was stacked with wahoo. It was just a sheet.
Even like blues and yellow. Like I've caught yellowfins off flyers and stuff, you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But
Have you ever done the whole cardboard or newspaper thing where people supposedly bring it out and
toss it and then mahi
Toss it in
fish
the
on the
water.
way home.
No. So what do they do? Keep track of like where it is?
yeah,
Our buddies in California, like when they're like yellowtail and mahi fishing, claim to do that a lot. The Burke brothers. Remember they were telling us about that?
yeah, they were like throwing stuff out, and then was it in the afternoon they go back?
Yeah.
It was like the same. I think it was the same day. They
Yeah.
go back and check them.
Yeah.
You know, it was like something that would degrade quickly, or you know, you could hit with a boat.
Yeah.
or whatever. I think it was
box
newspaper.
cardboard or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
We could go on forever about
I mean, the
dredge fishing.
fad thing though,
Fads.
you know, if the word got out, that's it. It gets smoked.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? There'd be like 15 boats just circling around.
Yeah.
You know, rigger to rigger.
Yeah. Speaking about multiple boats, tournaments. What's the tournament schedule this year? And I know Taylor has a question about tournaments in general.
We'll hear about the tournaments first.
Yeah.
What the OBBC is going to happen again. It's the dates are July 11th is the registration, and then the fish days are the 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th. And guys can pick 2 out of those 4 days, just like always. And then we're doing the SFC. So the SFC has a Gulf division and an Atlantic division. So
Sportfishing Championship.
For those of you, the listeners who don't know what the SFC is, it's a kind of a PGA tour of fishing. So there's like 11 tournaments total. I think there's 12 actually this year. And basically boats have to fish at least 3, and then they compete for the most points. And it's billfish oriented. So it's white marlin, it's blue marlin, and it's sailfish and swordfish. We don't have sailfish in the Atlantic, so I'm advocating that they take out sailfish, but I doubt that's going to happen because that'll piss everyone off in the South. But it's kind of hard, you know, we can't catch a sailfish up here. So we're a little bit against the odds, but they do have an Atlantic division this year, which is nice, unlike last year. And it's a $100,000 prize, so you just have to fish 3 events. So my event is SFC oriented. The Tri-State, which is the week after mine, is SFC oriented. And then there's a tournament in New Jersey that's right around the 4th of July that's down in Cape May. They're also part of the SFC. So those are the 3 events in the Northeast that people can fish. And there's also a tournament in St. Augustine that's part of the Atlantic Division for boats. And that's a June tournament. And so for boats that are down there, like Brian Dennison keeps his boat down in Palm Beach, you know, he could fish St. Augustine on the way back.
Gotcha.
But we might fish it. I haven't let the cat out of the bag yet, but I might fish the SFC version of my tournament. So I wouldn't fish in the OBBC, but I may fish for the points for the SFC.
That's cool.
You got to keep your own tally, though. There has to be like a side count kind of beating Damon.
You at least got to have like a little bit of it.
All right, I'll do that. I'm going to say Taylor gave me the idea.
Yeah.
I feel like
beating Damon extra.
I feel like you've been doing tournament stuff for so long that like people really wouldn't care, you know? But then if you win it, it's still that like, oh,
no, you don't want to win. Yeah, you
don't want to win your own tournament.
Cut that thing off.
then you're douche number 1. There was a guy who did that who ran the Montauk tournament, and he his name was Dave. He actually passed on, but some guys took over the tournament. But when he ran it, he fished it and won it, I think. Or won one of the big Calcuttas, and it was very controversial. And then he stopped doing that, you know.
Yeah.
And so when I found that out, I was like, "There's no way I'll ever fish Tuna Fest." Like I wanted to fish Tuna Fest one year, and then I was like, "I can't do that," because you know, then you look like an ass.
Make a little side thing, make it cheap, and everybody would do it. You know, basically your own tournament in your tournament.
It would be fun.
Everybody knows the results. That like, if you win, you win. You know, it is what it is.
I would do a dock thing.
Yeah.
With like with like Rob
Black
Carmichael. Yeah, I would. You know, and like
That would be the way to do it for sure.
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know.
That'd
be hilarious.
That would be fun. Bless you.
Yeah.
Thank you. But the you know, the SFC, I just want to see it work because it's a cool concept, and they did a nice job with the production last year and the TV element, and it's good for sponsors, it's good for the sport, you know, and they're advocating, you know, catch and releasing marlin, you know, it's not a kill thing. So I mean, I think, and we have such a great bill fishery up here. Like no one, you know, unless you live here, you know, you don't think of the Northeast as like a blue marlin fishery, but it really is, and you guys know, and it's like, you know, and the fish are big too, you know,
And they're not pressured.
They're not pressured at all. I mean, there's no commercial fishing up here other than, I mean, there's some long lining offshore, But and I don't know. I don't know how many. I'd like to know. I'd be curious to know if those guys do have a bycatch of billfish.
Yeah.
With the line lining, but
Yeah.
I'm sure they do.
they probably do.
Do you want to ask your tournament
Yeah.
question?
So looking into the future, like, 20 years away, where do you see these tournaments kind of going? Because I see like two different style tournaments now. You got like the ones that are like a long time period.
like the SFC kind of. It's like multiple
The
tournaments.
Mongo
Like the
Yeah.
Mongo
Or like
kind of.
Roland's tournament when he was doing
Offshore
that.
Cup,
Yeah.
which really was the pioneer event for that.
Yeah, it really was.
Right. Do you see tournaments shifting more towards this like broader scope where guys can kind of fish whenever they want, or do you see them going to more like the old school where you got
The event in it.
36 hours to fish, the party, all that stuff, or do you see them both always happening?
Well, I think the party element you can do. So it's funny you asked that because I am contemplating doing Battle of the Bay again, but doing it over a 2-week period as opposed to doing it in like 3 days, especially with the close days and
The Fleets is brutal with tournaments in the bank. Like
Yeah.
this year with, I'm not going to mention tournaments names, but when there was like 2 tournaments on one weekend,
It was unfishable.
it was legitimately unfishable, and it destroyed the fish for like 2 weeks.
I was just going to say,
slowed it
probably
way
put a
the
clamp
fuck
But
down
down.
a
on
2
fishing.
week, like he's saying, would be magical, and guys could spread
Go
out.
at their leisure.
Yeah.
Have multiple weigh stations, and what I would do is I would have 3 certified scales that I would own and certify myself with the IGFA. I already own 2, and basically we'd have 3 different locations. We might even have one in like P-Town or at some place that's easy and in a kind of a universal spot for people. And then basically do like a cyber event where if you want to check in, you can see the videos online, you can see the weigh-ins online, you can see the catch stats online. We'll have a phone app like we do for the OBBC, which is great because a lot of people use it. All the fishermen now, when they want to know what's going on, instead of calling me at midnight, from a bar, who's in third, they just go online and they see the catch stats. And so we will probably try to do something like that. I just want to see where I've heard rumors that the season's going to start this year at 1 fish. I haven't heard it. I don't know if you guys have heard that, but
1 fish a day.
1 fish a day.
Yeah.
Haven't heard that yet.
Surprised me, but
Which would be great because I feel like it would help extend the fall fishing a little bit so that September and October don't just because I feel like the quota in October has been reduced so much that we only get like a week. I forget how many
we've
days.
had 0 trickle into November too.
Although this year we went into late October.
Yeah, I think our last day was like the 20th. Like our last charter commercial, there was 20th, 25th ish.
Yeah, this year wasn't bad, but we also had a lot of shit weather.
And we didn't have November. We didn't fish at all in November
Or August.
or August.
August has been closed
November is
second
like-
week almost every year for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
And it's
August.
some of the sickest fishing.
Right. And it's summertime, that's
Yeah.
when you want to be out there, it's like, I don't know. I like fishing in the fall too, don't get me wrong, but
It's cold.
it's cold but tournament, back to the tournament thing, I'd rather do a tournament in the summertime because it's fun. You can do the party. We could still do a big, celebratory thing with music and food and just do it at the end, but have, these are the days, whatever the days were. I forget. It was like Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever the open days are. Boom. Those are the days you can fish. Here are the weigh stations. Here are the weigh station hours. And it's doable. It's a lot of work. But, we already have the template. I think Battle of the Bay, people liked it. I think it's a cool concept, and I would love to bring it back.
I think your P-Town idea is a really good one for a couple reasons. One is it's near the fishing grounds. 2, there's bait there too. So it's like to go do a pit stop, weigh station, and then if you're going the next day, like if it's like a Sunday, Monday thing, I would be more apt to go way in like P-Town than to go like way up north or something,
It's just the problem is it's like who's going to be
I know.
who's going to camp out
So
in P-Town for like
2
it's
weeks.
so remote.
Yeah.
Well, they'd have to, what I'd have to do is find a local, and maybe it's even one of the buyers who, if I had a guy from, one of the, if I had Scott or somebody from Red's Best, I'm just speaking hypothetically here, like, and had one of my scales with the truck, that's possible. You know what I mean? And because then again, everything would have to be video documented. And so one of the rules I would have is that the fishermen are responsible for, when you're bringing in a fish, you have to video document the fish being, hanging on the scale, not touching anything. And then you got to shoot the scale so that it's clearly visible. And then that's it. We need to see it on video. That way, everybody substantiates, or that substantiates in front of everybody, and everybody sees and agrees, yep, that's the weight of the fish. And there's no like uncertainty and, so-and-so is a friend of so-and-so, and it's a he said, she said thing. Video, nothing lies. The only problem with doing video is that if there is an infraction, all hell breaks loose, and then you get like, this big thread of controversy. Yeah. Like with Roland's tournament had that, where there was like some stuff that, someone was like, hey, like that wasn't really a successful release. That shouldn't count, and then believe me,
it's tough.
It's tough
so
when you're
hard.
a tournament organizer and you deal with controversy. Look what's going on with the tri-state.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Kyle because Kyle didn't do anything wrong, and now he's trying to put out a fire.
Yeah.
That's what you run into with these tournaments, especially when there's money involved. And I hate to say it, but that's why people fish them.
Yeah.
That's why we, went down to fish the Mid-Atlantic. We were blue marlin fishing. I was like hoping to catch that one lucky blue marlin.
The purse fish.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, we weren't even tuna fishing. Now I look back and I'm like, I probably would have had a better shot tuna fishing. Yeah. And we actually did tuna fish one day. We ran like 120 something miles to the Hudson because there was a bite there the day before, and a few other people did. De Blasio ran up there, Dean went up there, Mark was there fishing a different tournament, and then of course the day I go, nobody got a fish. Yeah. It was dead. But that's tournament fishing.
Tournament fishing's fun. It's frustrating. There's a lot of different variables. I do like I think the whole longer term thing is awesome.
I'd love to see one in the future.
Selfishly, because we could potentially fish a tournament like that easier than.
I just feel like everybody's got a schedule, and it can be difficult. And obviously, there's some people that don't, and they can do whatever they need to do. I'd love to see one. This is looking way down the line that lasts the whole summer for bluefin. That way there's no pressure of. There's no pressure of the days and the quota and this and this. It's like June 1st, freaking October 31st. The only problem
with doing that, I used to have convos with Ted Rosebeck, who founded the Offshore Cup, and we would talk about like a full long season tournament. But the problem is just staffing the. See, the problem with bluefin, I think, is that people want to see the weight as opposed to... Now, if you did just measurements like the Offshore Cup did, then you could do that. Mm-hmm. And then you just submit your videos, and then, the team of whatever the panel you have on your tournament, team, whatever, the team looks at the videos, substantiates the catch, boom, you're recorded. And everything's in the open. The problem is, you might get a guy that's like, who's like, yeah, I caught 105-inch fish, but the thing was fat and was grander, and why should I, miss out on this other fish that was an eraser? So it's like, I feel like with tuna, people might want to push for the weight, but I don't know.
Can you go like, this is a total brainstorm session, but could you go based off of what the actual like buyer's slip says for dressed weight and just do dressed weight?
Yeah, but it's so hard. Again, it's like, what if they take an extra inch off the collar? What if they cut it one finlet up and then
one buyer's maybe chops it up differently than the other buyer, or
it's true,
and then
it's brined and then it expels water weight. Or is it like the core weight before it goes in the brine?
People need to see. Yeah. When there's money involved, they need to see with their own eyes.
Yeah, they couldn't just look at a slip.
Yeah, correct. 100%.
Correct. That's why the Offshore Cup I thought was awesome. I was bummed when they when that stopped happening. Yeah. And the Mongo guys have done a nice job. I didn't fish it last year. I was kind of kicking myself because I kind of wish I did, because it was really well run. I was following it a little bit. So we'll probably do that this year. Yeah. But again, it's you got to staff those weigh-ins. It's not easy. It's difficult, especially with the bluefin tournament, because a lot of fish. A lot of fish will be caught. Yeah. you know, especially if you had, like, say you had 60, 70 boats fishing that thing and guys are going, like, unless you limited the days, you know, like you said, hey, look, you know,
Tag in, tag out type of thing.
you got to, like, in other words, you got to pick, you know, 4 days is what you get out of the 2-week span. Then at least you limit the weigh-ins.
Yeah.
Because otherwise people are like, I'm going every day. And you know, let's face it, if you're on your game, you might catch a fish every day.
Yeah. You definitely have to limit the days. I don't know. I think there's some
So you see, like,
potential
you
there.
you think there'll always be this kind of 2 different style tournaments
I think
from
so.
now on?
I think so, because people still enjoy the camaraderie of the reunion aspect. I mean, I used to fish that shark tournament. I don't know if you guys fished that back in the day.
Monster
The
shark.
Steve, the monster shark. And I hate shark fishing, you know, and it used to ruin my nice teak trance. And I used to yell at everybody.
Oh, I've seen so many videos of you guys with a shark next to the boat or gaffing something. You're like, watch the transom.
I think, like, honestly, my mates have nightmares of that, like, bellowing in their eardrums, you know. But and you know what? It is. It's a messy fucking not. It's not a. There's no glamour and there's really no glory in shark fishing. It's like, you know, you're bringing these things in, and they're wrecking the boat. A lot of times you're just trying to release them and not leave them with, like, you know, 20 feet of wire dangling out of their jaws.
Yeah.
And they always break shit. Gaffs get bent, gaffs get taken, boats get damaged. You know, you see these videos online with the Makos ending up in the boat.
Oh, yeah.
You see that
That
video?
most recent one.
Yeah.
The most recent one
I
where
don't know
they're
how
all
that
like,
guy's leg didn't get bit off.
and how quickly that shark went from like 100 feet away in the air to like in the cockpit.
Insane.
One jump was 100 feet away, and then it was like 1,000, 1,000, boom, things
in the
cockpit. You know, it's nuts.
It's so fast.
But to circle back to the event there was insane.
It was fun, and it was like a reunion. You got to catch up with a bunch of fish nuts. It was, the Oak Bluffs in general. It's just a fun location for a tournament. And Steve had like 300 boats in that thing. I mean, he had boats coming up from like the Carolinas, and there was a lot of money there. I used to love fishing it for that aspect, for the recreational aspects, not even the fishing. It was just, again, just the party, the fun. And so we try to, bring that into the OBBC and having the pig roast and having some music.
That's a fun tournament.
You got a great mixture in your tournaments.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. I mean, we've worked hard at it. It's hard dealing with island politics and I'll be honest with you, this year we've run into a bit of a roadblock just for this year with our award ceremony location, because somebody booked a wedding. So it's a yacht club where we do it, and one of the members booked a wedding or booked a birthday party, 80th birthday party, the same night of our award ceremony. So this year we're going to have to do it. I think we're going to do it in a big tent in Falmouth, and just have a shuttle bringing the vineyard boats over. I mean, right now we have half and half. We have half the boats on island and half the boats are on the mainland.
Yeah.
So the mainland guys last year took the shuttle from Falmouth and came out to the island, right to the yacht club. Now it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be from Oak Bluffs right to the tent, just for the awards ceremony. We'll still have a weigh-in in OB and a weigh-in in Falmouth, and that helped out a lot, having the dual weigh stations.
Yeah.
Because honestly, it's really not the Oak Bluffs Blue Water Classic anymore. It's like the Cape Cod Blue Water Classic.
It is.
It really is.
It really is.
And I want to open it up to people so that, guys from Rhode Island don't feel like I got to get a slip in February, and if I can't get into OB, I'm screwed.
Yeah. And it's a hop, skip, and a jump. And actually doing it the way you're doing it now, it's like anyone that's a mainlander, like now they're on their way out after the event at the end.
Right.
It's easier.
Exactly.
Logistically,
That's
it's
probably
a
the
little
majority
easier.
of the people too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
All the mates and stuff that travel to get fish the tournament, the captains, people that are either hired or just fishing with buddies.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. I mean, whenever there's change, there's always the agony. Always.
Yep.
But
Oh,
I think overall, I think it'll be good.
Yeah, it's a fun tournament.
The fishing's always good that week. I don't know what it is about that week, but it's like, and it's always, I'm like the week prior, I'm always doing a charter to go try to find something so I can at least like, throw something online like, hey, the bite's good. And this year, the past 2 years I went, it really wasn't great. It was like we scraped out like, 9 yellowfin and maybe like a white marlin or something. And so going into this year, I remember doing a trip and I was like, fuck, the blue water is like just out of range. Because that's the other thing. There's a range. It's 125 mile range, I think, or 130 miles. And like, it's basically oceanographer. And the water was at Lydonia. And all of a sudden we had this like big push of westerly current out there. And that eddy went right into ocean. And it was in range. And all the boats went there and it was on fire. But we got lucky. It was in the nick of time. But I'll tell you, early on when that water, I feel like maybe the reason the fishing's good is because it's the first time the blue water gets hammered.
Yeah. Have you thought about increasing your range? A couple more canyons?
We thought about it.
Yeah. And what is the main, I mean, I know like obviously you want to make it quote unquote fair for the small boats.
Well, that's what it is. So when the 1 year we increased it, we had pushback from, I love Johnny Galvin to death, but Johnny was on a boat that didn't have the range, and he was pissed, and I get it, And the reason why we made that rule change was because the water was all at oceanographer. There was no fishing like west of there. It was weird. It was just dead zone. And unfortunately for Johnny and some other boats, they had to fish in the dead zone. And then the boats that went to ocean crushed it.
Yeah.
But I was doing it to save the tournament and get the fishing good. I mean, and Kyle's dealt with the same thing in the tri-state. He's done it the other way around. He used to allow boats to run to ocean from Block Island, which, most boats can't make that journey.
That's a far run.
That's
like
a long.
Is that like 180? What is that?
No, it's
130.
130. It's like 150. I think.
150?
It's 130 to hydro. And that's a poke. That's like basically the edge of his tournament is the eastern wall of hydro, and I've done that twice, and for me it's 6 hours, and I've gone back on fumes. But he used to have I think it was 150 miles, and Cookie Murray would run out the speculator to oceanographer at like 90 miles an hour, and he'd be fishing when people were still halfway to like Atlantis. And he was winning the tournament. He won like 2 years in a row. And that's pretty impressive.
He's
and
a magician.
And people would blame it on, it's because you had the fast boat. It's like, well, no. I mean, it was Cookie Murray, let's face it. But,
Yeah.
But it was an advantage to be able to get there faster and long and have that range and well outside most boats' range. I mean, most boats can't even get to hydro from Block Island. And my boat has good range, and that's like pushing it for me. It's like going to George's. Basically,
Your boat's one of the prettiest boats to see on the water.
It is. It's a unique boat.
There was one day in the bay, Slick was on that big Viking. You were like just west of me.
I remember you guys were fighting.
We hooked
fish.
up and we were just chatting a little bit on the radio and stuff. But I kept looking at him like, that thing's so sweet looking.
It is.
It really is. It's a nice boat.
She's a one of a kind. It's funny. That's the smallest Jim Smith ever built. That was built for the owner of Jim Smith at the time when it was built in the 90s. Frank Graham was the owner of Jim Smith, and that was his personal boat. And it's set up for daytime fishing, so it really doesn't have any fish storage. I mean, it does, but it's not. That's the only thing about that boat I would love to change is to just rip out the existing fish box, because there is room underneath to do it. But it's just it's like a $10,000 project.
It's a big project.
It's a big project.
Did you just repower?
I just repowered.
Yeah.
I just put a new generator in. I just did all new easy to CY. I'm doing the covering boards right now.
Nice.
I'm doing all the kind of the schlep work and the prep work, and then I got a buddy of mine who's a finished carpenter doing all the the finish work on it.
Cool.
But that's a huge job in itself. There was so much rot. I got to say, like, the starboard side, the water got in through the rub rail and somehow got underneath, and just I was ripping. It was like a can of worms. I was ripping up the wood, and then it was like chiseling out like pulp from an orange.
Yeah.
And I literally had to take out even some of the framework, not of the hull, but like the of the underneath the covering board. And we got rid of all of it, but it was a bitch, man. It took like a week.
Boats are always fun.
Yeah.
When are you getting the 90 footer?
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to keep this thing because I love the fact that I can go out and fish. If I had to, I could go solo and do a solo mission on it. Not that I would do that again, but like it just
That story is
We've heard
amazing.
some stories.
That story from last
it's
year
only
is
that.
amazing.
Yeah, that was such a heartbreaker, man. And and the whole time I was fighting that fish, I'm like, I'll never do this again. So please stay on the line. Yep. But
that's great.
but no, it's a good boat. I'm happy with it. You know.
That thing's sweet.
Any custom boat though, you guys. I mean, you just gotta dump some TLC into it, or you'll lose it. You know.
I'm supposed to be jumping on the truck this afternoon to go fish Carolina on Joey Dion's. When they get that refit by Blackwell, I think. I'm excited to see it. I think it was Blackwell.
Is it Blackwell? Wait, no, you talking about the Thunder?
Thunder, they had it refit at Blackwell, I believe.
Yeah, but
maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think the refit was, but it's an actual. I forget the make, but it's it looked like a Hatteras, but it's not. He told me the make. He was actually fishing my tournament, and I asked him. I forget what it was, but I think you're right. I think Blackwell did the work.
It's a sweet little boat.
Really is.
I'm excited to hopefully catch some tunas on it.
I remember that boat. I remember when Joey was like a kid. He was like 8 years old, and when I was fishing out of Green Harbor.
Yeah, he's an awesome guy.
Yeah.
So seminar, what are you looking forward to most this year? First off, last year was a blast.
Yeah, it was fun.
We met some awesome new people. We got to meet Archie, talk to Archie and Greg for like 2 hours at the end of it.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Archie's good people. Archie, there's so many good stories with Arch too. I mean, you could go on for days.
Yeah.
Days. I mean, I told him like I want to interview you sometime and get like some of your best stories so I can like tell them and like write them. Yeah. Because he has some amazing stories.
Unbelievable stuff. But what's new and what are you excited for this year? What can people expect from it?
We got a lot of new content this year. We for the new guys coming in, or even guys who are just been at it for a few years and want to learn. Like we still have our workshops, so we'll do the bait rigging stuff. It's all hands on, so you literally put the gloves on and rig the stuff right then and there.
What we were just talking about, swimming mackerel.
Yeah, swimming max, ballyhoo. We're gonna have a thing on teasers, like how to actually beef up your teaser baits in the canyons and actually throw some actual meat in there, some scent in there. And then we have last year there was a really good bite, and it's actually been the past few years. It's just last year guys really got savvy to it. There's been a really good inshore yellowfin bite. Cox Ledge had yellowfin. Nice ones, 60, 80 pounders, but then Butterfish Hole south of, the dump, all those areas were loaded with yellowfin last year. And a lot of guys would go right through them. I'd see them, but a lot of my clients want billfish, so we would just keep running. But, we stopped on the way in a couple times and caught some fish. But so Jack Sprengel's going to do a nice talk on that. On how to target like yellowfin tuna, not going all the way to the canyon, especially for the guys who don't have the range, or if you got a smaller center console, you really only have to go 30 miles, as long as the water's there. So he's going to talk about that, and then Matt Paracchio is going to do a lot of focus on the jigging popping thing, primarily jigging for the big bluefin, because a lot of guys were losing fish. I mean, when I was in Chatham, I think I like 90% of the guys that hooked fish lost them. I mean, I watched fish after fish being lost, and I did too. The one day, and the only reason why I dropped the jig down was just out of necessity, because I had nothing else to throw at them. I had no bait. Dogs ate all my friggin' squid, but I'll tell you right now, the fucking thing didn't hit the bottom, and then it went off. So it's a very effective way to catch tuna. And, Matt is going to talk about how to dial that in and do it effectively without losing fish. What tackle to use, right down to the jigs, the hooks, the line, the rods, who's making the rods, where to get them, what reels are working. So that'll be a good talk for the guys, even the guys who are intermediate level, who have been doing it and losing fish. It's a tough fishery, that jigging fishery is no joke, and you're on those fish for a long time. You got to be a good angler. You need, there are special harnesses that are out now that you can use with a spinning rod application, so you're not going to kill yourself. And then, so
that's good. I mean, that seminar alone, even if it saves a couple hundred fish,
absolutely,
just because of that.
Absolutely. Because you know what? You shouldn't be bringing the knife to the gunfight out there. It's just absolutely right. You're just hurting the fish populations. And people might think, it's light braid. What the hell's that? Well, no, it's going to kill the fish.
Yeah.
You get 500 yards of anything.
Yeah.
Throw 500 yards of even 20-pound braid in the water with a hook in your hand. It'll go right through your fucking hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. Look at what happens when you hook a blue marlin. You get that belly in the line, and it's ripping 40 pounds of drag off the reel like butter. And that's just from the line.
Yeah.
The fish might be jumping right next to you, and the line's going like this.
Yeah.
But back to the jigging thing, the tuna, if they are swimming around that loose line, I can't tell you how many fish I've caught that have had line wrapped around their tails. Like my buddy Aaron Briggs caught a fish this year on the bank that had like long line gear that was just like came out of the fish's mouth and then went around the dorsal and then ran around the tail. I mean, the fish was like a knot, and it was an eraser. It was dying. That fish was on the way out. So. That's what happens, So yeah, people need to be cognizant of that and get the right stuff, unfortunately, it's an expensive game when you want to get into that jigging game. Like you really got to get those, the reels. If you want to get a Stella, it's a great reel, but it's not cheap. And you really got to get into the custom rod market too. Shimano makes really good rods, and then there's a lot of customs. I know Kyle at J&B makes a really good rod too. But that jigging game is a whole different ball of wax from the conventional fishing.
It really is.
Just the terminal tackle alone.
Yeah, the terminal tackle alone, the knots, everything, splicing. Yeah. But then so Matt will be doing that, and then he's Jack's gonna be focusing on the canyons, and again jigging at the canyons. Guys are out there all night and they put out a swordfish spread and go to sleep, and you can do that, and maybe you had a good day and you don't want to deal with fish, but you guys know, like when you get the jigs going out there, you can bail yellowfin.
Oh, yeah.
And big eye.
Yeah.
And even the soft baits, the Pogies and the Ronzis, they crush fish.
Even swords, like just having that action and motion and lights on and sword baits
going
out. And I've heard multiple stories of guys hooking swords on jigs while they're doing that.
Oh yeah, I hooked a white marlin on a Ronzi.
That's sick.
Lost it, came up though and jumped, and I was like, that was a fucking white marlin. It was like right next to us too.
Yeah.
And it was in the slick eating chum.
That's wild.
And then Mark's going to talk about, there's another thing that's been happening the past few years is this dragger bite has been insane, like on fire. And the hype was at the Hudson, but there were draggers at most of the canyons. They were stuffed with fish, and honestly, the way to work those draggers is to just call them on 16. And they're nice guys. A lot of them are from the Carolinas, super cool. They're, hey, I've had fish on, around me for 24 hours. And they literally have piles of fish just following them around. So Mark's going to talk about like how to target, tunas behind the draggers.
That's cool.
I'm interested to watch that one.
Yeah,
that'll be a good one because the Montauk guys have figured it out. They've put the time in over the past few years, but that's a new developing fishery that really wasn't around a few years ago. Guys, everyone knows you can fish around the draggers, but nobody was doing it hard at the canyons like that, especially during the day.
Even just understanding how the gear works and all that. Like Mark understands that because he does a lot of it. So like he knows where to set, like whether he needs to be on it or set back from the dragger. Like he just can read that whole situation. So just that knowledge base alone is going to be incredible.
Chumming's really important fishing for tuna. Even like, and I'm doing a talk on giant fishing and chumming and how to chum, even if there's dogfish around, how to do it without, creating a massacre of dogfish. And I found that when we chummed, even in Rhode Island, I was doing a lot of fishing down there, a little bit of chum goes a long way. And there's a pattern, there's a science to it that I found helps, and everybody has, there's a million different ways to get a chum line going. But it's not a case of just throwing bait in the water. As soon as they go out of, sight, throw another heap in there. You can do that, but that's not what this is going to be about. This is going to be about like how to, when you mark fish, when to chum, when not to chum, how to get the fish in the slick, what to look for. And not only that, but how to present, place your hook baits in the right spot. Don't just send them out on a balloon with a weight 50 feet behind the boat and assume, it's in my chum line.
Yeah.
We don't use weights. When we're chum fishing, it's all hand line, and I know you guys do a lot of that. And I feel like that's a much more stealth presentation for bluefin without any weight and, without any, nothing, just right out of the hand.
I think they sense the lead a lot of times, especially when you get the chum, it's all certain density, it's all doing different things. And then your lead's hanging in the slick. It's like, why isn't that moving?
Yeah.
I think that's for a variety of reasons.
They're not dumb.
I think people are really, like, they try to go too hard, too fast with it. It's like, get the spread out and then throw a chum. It's like, we kind of take the slow, steady approach. Like, throw a couple pieces, see if they're going to react to it. Like, might not even wet a line, and just really kind of ease your way into it and get them comfortable.
You know what I found is on calm days, more times than not, I'd say 50% of the time, I'm going to say, we can get the fish to come right to the boat on a calm. I don't know if you guys have seen.
Oh yeah.
Where and I've never really gone super public with it, and I wish and you really can't video it because all you see is like a flash, or you might see a finlet, but they're there, and it might be just one fish, but if you're chumming correctly and you're not throwing too much bait in the water, they will come right in. That's the key I find is like if you throw too much shit in the water, they'll hang back the whole time. But you can get them right the fucking back of the boat. Now, they're not easy to catch though. I found those fish are wicked shy too. And you can put a hook bait in, and I swear on my kids, I saw a fish eat chum and then swim to my hook bait and then turn. Yeah. I had a 180-pound fluoro and it turned down the herring. I had a whole herring.
We watched them go from 400 to 180 before they bit, and like visually watched the same fish refuse, wham.
Isn't that interesting?
It's insane.
And then another thing I've noticed is the way you cut your chunks.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Archie about it, and it's funny when we were talking about it, he gave me this look, kind of like, you figured that one out.
Yeah.
But just sometimes they like the chunks.
We had quite a few. Like in comparison to the last 10 years, this past season, we had quite a few days where we had the fish and the chum. And we're going to talk about that a lot at the seminar too. And just how we're just being ready for it every single day, What
were we talking about?
We're about halfway through seminar topics. We mentioned that in our presentation, it's going to be similar to last year, going through last year's report, kind of what we saw, different trends, different bait. And then I want to talk a lot about chumming because there was 4 days, and that doesn't seem like a lot, but like 4 days where that was the reason the day was so epic. And if we weren't prepared, it would have been one bite or no bites, and just like to your point, like looking at marks on the screen and like knowing when these fish might be responsive to chum versus not, areas where it works better. Sharky conditions, like how to do it, when not to do it. I think it's just one of those things that it was such a huge hot trend, like probably right when you started, chumming in the bay. And now like there's this whole new generation of fishermen where, I guess it's like the older side of that new generation that's never fucking done it before.
They go out there. I see. I mean, you guys see the bay guys now, they all think they're like tuna professionals. Not all of them, but like, because they fish out there, but those are the only places they fish, and they go out there and they don't, they just sit there and soak baits in the water and drift. Yeah. And you can get fish, don't get me wrong. You can get bites doing that, but like, I would, I don't know, I guess unless you smoke a lot of pot, like, you need, there's a lot of waiting out there, and like, totally. Every little bit helps, and like putting a kite bait, putting a couple of kite baits out there, and just creating some disturbance on the water,
And just like an understanding that when fish get to specific size ranges, they start to behave a lot differently. Like 105-inch plus fish, they might not always respond to chum, but I'm telling you right fucking now, you throw a few pieces, even if you don't mark them coming back, it's getting him back to your baits. Yeah, like that fish is like around. They're like trained to do that. They do it everywhere. Yeah. They're used to being in and around boats, in and around gear. Not saying that like they're not going to feel the pressure. But like if it's August and I know all the fish are 100+ inches and there's herring around, like I don't feel crowded if a guy's an 1/8 mile, 1/4 mile from me, or a couple guys layered on the edge. Like they're still gonna fucking bite.
Yeah, they're not scared.
You know,
big fish.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes obviously getting away from people will help get the bite. But
what do you guys? Do you ever get bait off the draggers?
No, we just every morning, because we've had so many mackerel. You know, contradictory to what the scientists are telling us, but
I know, right?
We've had so many mackerel that every non-hook bait size mackerel we save until we fill a 5-gallon bucket every day.
Gotcha.
And like later in the season, we'll try to get like half a pan or a full pan while we're jigging and fish 3 or 4 bait rods in the morning. We're getting fresh max every morning, or herring, whatever. And we typically whole bait chum just because the sharks have been so bad.
Yeah.
It's like we don't want that
creating
extra,
all that blood.
We just want, it's more of like a shine attractant, less of a smell attractant, you know?
yeah.
So like you look at the spearfishing guys throwing, you know, they have daisy chains of, you know, old CDs that are just shining, or they have those flashers they throw down. It's the same thing with a fucking whole big mackerel going down there.
Right, with a little scent.
It's the same sort of thing.
Yeah,
you know,
it is. There's a lot of things you can do, you know, with any kind of fishing. Little extra things you can do to just help.
Yeah.
On the days when they're, you know, when they're being stubborn.
Totally.
Sometimes it helps mentally too. Like, yeah, you might not get the bite because of it, but like at least you feel like you're trying everything you can.
Yeah.
You know, if only I kept some extra mackerel, you know, this fish has looked at my down rod 4 times.
If I had only brought live pogies instead of dropping jigs down. Yeah. No, I know.
Who's going out to the bay first with 500 dead pogies and just gonna chum whole pogies?
Or 500 live pogies and live chumming. I was watching when Seth came out, he was talking about Rob Taylor, and I watched, I think it was an On the Water episode with Rob bass fishing in Newport or in and around Rhode Island. And he's like live chum bombing, live pogies, getting the bass to start frothing, and then he's actually pitching baits into them.
So
pretty interesting.
supposedly, I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but apparently if you go out in the middle of nowhere, like the bay or even east of the bank, and you throw a handful of pogies in, they'll find each other like the bait fish down in Florida.
Yeah.
You know, you get like the pilchers and all that stuff where you're live chumming.
And they'll usually come to the boat.
And they make little schools. Yep. Apparently pogies will do that. Apparently they'll like seek each other and hang out together. And I guess if you bump around, you can actually stay with them.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting.
Be cool.
Like bring 50 extra baits out there.
You know what I would want to try too is, so we've slow trolled kites, you know, kite baits. Pogies work great for that. We've done that a lot. And you know, you just get the crosswind and you just kind of troll, you know, with the wind, with the kite out off the side, and the pogie just swimming with the boat. And then you know you tack and come the other way. You know, as long as you have the kite off the side, it works. And you know, I'd love to do that I'd love to throw some live chum in the water and see if my guess is, because I know when I'm bass fishing,
they follow you?
Yeah, well, I think they always come to the boat. Like, so I'm fishing with Rob West. You can ask Rob. Like, if it always happens to him more than me, but his pogie stays at the boat. He's trying to sling it away, and the fucking thing comes right back to the boat. And anyways, I wonder if like you could do that. Throw a bunch of chum in the water, throw like 20 pogies in there, and then just slow troll and see if they follow you. You know?
Imagine if they followed your kite bait. Like if you pitched like 4 at the kite bait as you're trolling, and they like legit followed that hook bait.
Right.
You know what we need? We need like a few years with no charters.
Oh yeah.
You know, no one to impress on the boat, and just go out and just fuck.
Well, that's it. It's so hard to not do the Old Faithful, because the Old Faithful works. Like, don't fix it if it's not broken. And like, you know, when you're in your routine, it's hard to just break out of that and try shit.
It is.
Because, you know, and you guys know, like when you're fishing on the bank, like you're dialed in, you know what works. But at the same time, it's like, well, what if I tried this? And, you know,
there's been many times where I'm like, and Mike Murphy actually brought this up to me when he bought his little Seacraft, but putting like a dead herring on a planer and just trolling like 100 feet of water up and down the bank.
I know.
You know? Like there's so many things you'd want to try. That's what I think is so cool about the seminars is, you know, presenters and everyone there, even the attendees. Like I learned so much from people just in the side conversations, but a lot of those guys, it's not their charter business, it's their passion. And like, I think they should be taking some of this stuff and trying that.
Yeah.
You know, like if you have that time and, fun disposable income and you're really passionate about it, fucking try that shit.
Yeah. Think about like the daytime sword fishing thing. Like,
yeah.
No one thought you could do that. And now it's like, you don't even sword fish at night anymore.
Yeah.
So you're right. That's a good point. And somebody, like one person probably was like, whether it was RJ or somebody was like, there's swordfish down there. My buddy who's a diver saw them or whatever. I'm going to use a sash weight. I'm going to go right to the bottom during the day. And like one person had to try that, had to pioneer that. And it's kind of, when you think about it, it's kind of screwed up. Like it's not a normal way to fish.
Yeah.
To have, and I bet you they didn't have an electric reel at the time either.
Oh,
they
no.
probably did it with
Definitely not.
conventional. And I've done it with conventional tackle when I was fishing the offshore cup with clients. And they believe me when I say, reeling up to check a bait with a 10-pound weight takes about a half hour.
Yeah.
It's fucking brutal. And the thing is, the first fish we caught, I was with Tommy Howd, and I had a 50, and it was straight butt, and I had this guy Jimmy who's like one of my best clients, and like we hooked a fish, and the fish came right to the top like they always do, and Tommy was right on it. He's like, rod tips, we're on. So Jimmy's reeling, and he's like, it's coming at the boat, and we're like, no, I think he's coming up. And next thing you know, I see like it was like a mile away, like birds fly, and it was the fish, but. That's how far away, like that's when I was able to conceptualize, like that's how fucking far down we're fishing.
Yeah.
It's like another planet down there.
And the bites, like even with the braid and stuff, like that much line out, the bites delayed. Like think about that time. It's like, it's getting whacked. Well, it's not like it's the same exact fucking time.
True.
Right.
It's all delay. So like trying to read that whole piece of it, it's like an art in itself.
150 foot 150 story building.
Yeah.
You're standing on top of with a bait on the bottom.
Yeah.
Bait on the bottom. It's like a car is the size of a pea.
Yep.
It's fucked.
It's so sick though. But that just goes to show you, like, you never know. You try something once and it can evolve into a
So when are we making the fads?
So what are we up to? So we got, hold on. So out of all these last bunch of podcasts, we got daytime drifting.
Midwater
daytime
That's
drifting with deep baits. That's what Seth want to try. You want to try like hardcore natural dredge just to see the difference.
We're talking about portable dredge fishing.
Portable dredge, like nighttime.
Drift
like why aren't
fishing.
why aren't we rigging spreader bars that float just out there while you're drifting? I mean, some of these drifts at night when you're in the canyons are going freaking 4 knots, 3 knots. It's like put a hook bait out. With squids on it.
Didn't Dean say he wanted to kite fish or something?
You want to do like multiple weeks kite fishing.
Yeah.
I think it would be great to get into the kite fishing and put, like I've seen, and a lot of the Florida guys do this. They use the split shots, and I've seen Brett do it, and you put out multiple kites.
Yeah.
And we've done it. We've done the 2 kite thing before. I did it with Scotty and Johnny a lot. And we trolled, but like to go to the canyons and try, marlin fishing. Trolling kite baits, slow trolling, and then also trolling a bait behind the boat as well. So you get maybe 4 baits total, 2 kite baits with separated on the side, and then 2 baits off the corners, and just slow troll.
Yeah,
with annihilate.
I wonder if you would. I wonder if you get big eye and yellowfin, and I wonder if pogies would work out there. I've never tried a pogie at the canyons as a live bait.
They do live in really warm water.
They do.
They can.
No, they can. I mean, my harbor gets like 75, so I know they can live in warm water.
Oh God,
I know.
Imagine pogies. Yellowfin will eat them. I know guys that get them on pogies or have got them on pogies.
Oh. I've got them on scup yellowfin. So I mean, if they eat a fucking scup, they'll.
Dude, I think white marlin would absolutely destroy pogies. And swordfish
might be hard for them to eat. The pogies just had such a big profile.
That's true. Yeah.
But you're right.
Blues,
I saw a white marlin during the shark tournament try to eat my bluefish on a kite. A white was just swimming around and beating the crap out of this 4-pound bluefish.
That's amazing.
He wouldn't eat it, but he just killed it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Huh.
But yeah, I love
Interesting.
I love innovative fishing methods. It's pretty cool. So the seminar is the 24th and 25th and 26th, Marriott Quincy.
Yep, people can get tickets online. They'll be for sale right up until the event. We won't be selling them at the door, but I just tell people, like, if you know you're going to go, just try to get them ahead of time, just so we can get your shirts, because we're making, like we do every year, we do custom shirts for everybody, and we want to make sure we have a shirt for you guys.
Cool.
Awesome.
And then one final thing I want to talk about, because I've been reading some of your excerpts online, but how's the book going?
It's coming. It's like scraping, cake batter out of an empty bowl for me. When I write, I write slow, but it's coming. I'm trying to get 12 stories. I think I got like 5 complete.
You're a good writer.
Thanks, man.
It's really a pleasure to read them,
I enjoy it. I definitely have some stories to tell, and I feel like it's just, I don't know, it's fun to just sit down in the off season and just kind of reminisce and get it on paper before I forget it all.
And fishermen are just I feel like they're naturally nostalgic. I mean, like, look around the office, anyone's shop. It's like being able to capture what you've experienced and like basically relive that story. It's awesome.
And everybody tells stories a little different too.
Yeah.
They threw a little more comedy in there, more serious, or
True.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Stories are great, and everybody has them. And I feel like everybody, everyone who really is passionate about the sport appreciates a good fish story, And
you're going to learn the most from experience. And, the more stories you read, the more experience you're going to get.
Yeah.
And let's face it, what we do is compelling. I mean, it's not every day that you see the shit we see,
No.
And it really isn't. It's a very, interesting and entertaining profession.
It is.
It really is.
Stressful, frustrating.
Oh, it'll make you want to shoot yourself in the face. But
The highs and the lows.
Yeah.
The highs and the lows we talked about that in one of these podcasts. We talked about how devastating it is when you lose a fish.
Yeah.
I was depressed for like 2 weeks after I lost that fish in the bay. Like literally, I was in a funk.
Yeah.
Miserable.
Speaking of losing fish and dovetailing into my latest endeavor, hunting feels that exact same way. So we talked about this a little bit with Ben, but this is my first year hunting by any method at all, and I was bow hunting. I got extremely fortunate and lucky to harvest a couple animals, but then I also got to experience the high shoulder hit, like watching an animal like get away. And it is like the feeling of losing a big tuna fish and the feeling of that, it's like multiplied by like 10,000 because you're watching the whole fucking thing happen.
Yeah, it's not vanishing.
There's nothing like that feeling, really.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's crazy.
Feeling of loss.
Yeah. And not knowing.
Yeah.
But that's what, those are the stories and the fish and the animals you remember most, that you learn from the most. Like, you won't make those mistakes again. You'll tweak your gear.
They feed the passion too.
Totally.
They motivate you.
Yeah.
Although, I'm sure some guys get knocked out of the game. They're just like, I've had it. I've lost 15 fish in a row. eBay,
Yeah. Yeah.
But, for us, I feel like it's just like, all right, we'll take the challenge.
Yeah. You're only going to get better after a moment like that.
You were lucky enough to have closure on that one, though. I mean, you saw him after or you think you saw him.
Oh, no, I have him on camera after, and so it's he's alive. Healed, and like, he doesn't look like a, anorexic, piece of shit. Like, seems to be doing well.
He's
thriving. So like, I was able to like, check that box and like clear that feeling. But I'm telling you, man, it's like, it's a tough thing to do.
Guilty.
I didn't even want to jump in a tree for I wouldn't say it was a week, but it felt like a week.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, everyone's got the ones that got away stories. Those are the best to hear.
I think the fact mine was coupled with wrapping a line around my prop and then like being in the canal and the train bridge down for an hour and a half. Like, it was just a serious comedy of events that I think the gods are up there laughing, going like, let's see if he like kills himself.
See how close we can get him.
Right. I mean, it was just
so
one
true.
thing after another.
By yourself, stuck in the canal.
Literally, with the train bridge down for, I'm not lying, it was over an hour. It was like an hour. And I was calling the canal patrol, like,
What
canal
if you're low
patrol,
on fuel? What the fuck happened?
Castafari on, channel 13, crickets. They were probably like,
Yeah. Well, it's how patient he can be. Oh, that's funny.
It was brutal.
So yeah, we're excited for the seminar.
Cool.
We're
Yeah.
excited to be back on the podcast grind. I'm excited to go to Carolina, Florida. We have so much artwork to do this winter. It's like
It looks great.
stressful.
Though. It looks
but
great.
it's exciting.
Yeah, it's catching on. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really cool. We had a couple really big commissions on the horizon that we're not going to talk about yet, but once we're in the middle of the project, I think a lot of people are going to be like, holy shit.
Nice.
Cool stuff.
So we're
Nice.
excited.
Good for you guys. That's awesome.
But yeah.
It's really well done. It's well crafted. Like, you know what I mean? It looks like really meticulously done, whatever router machine you guys have, or, it's doing all those prints.
It's cool because you get to you get to hear that person's story of the fish when they come in to drop it off, and then when they come in to get it. It's just, I don't know, the whole thing is awesome.
Relives their high almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah.
And that's great to
Story.
be able to imprint that memory into a piece of art.
Yeah, it's cool. So it's been a cool endeavor. I never would have thought spray painting tuna tails hanging from a fucking 3-foot ladder in my shed would evolve into, what it's become. So it's pretty cool.
I don't think is anybody else doing it.
So I actually learned a lot of the process, not the finishing process. That was his engineering mind, really. But the curing process and like the timing and all that, I learned from actually a guy in Canada who, like, you go into the bluefin, like the first time in Canada, go in the bluefin restaurant and you're looking up and there's tails there. It's like, how the fuck are those not rotting? And then met the guy and figured it all out.
That's cool.
It's one of those things too that like there's quite a few people that do their own tails, and like
power, sure, go for it.
We want, it's not like we're trying to like hold this market, but I'm not going to say how many we do, but to like start taking on, a lot of tails is not easy to do.
Yeah. No, it's time consuming.
It's time consuming, the space, the smell.
Yeah.
I mean, what a rotten tuna tail.
It's a full-time, I bet it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
It is.
The next 2.5 months, it's every single day.
It's every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, and you don't even have to do it with tails. I mean, there's so many other things.
Sure.
It's going to open your mind up a little bit.
Yeah.
Get outside the box.
Well, now that you're hunting, maybe,
We're working on some stuff.
We're working on
hunting
a few
too.
things.
Some arrows and
broadhead, preserve, not that you need to preserve them, but like incorporating broadheads and kind of some of the same epoxy work. And we can pretty much do anything. If anyone's out there listening, you have like some special piece or a couple of items that you want to incorporate into something, we can 100% make something.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's cool. We're excited to bring all this stuff to the show.
Maybe I'll give
again.
you my keys because I keep losing them.
Dude. Speaking of like quick key story, we have this charter guy that he's awesome. He fishes with us probably up to 10 trips a year, giant fishing and some bass fishing too. But he's got this key bad luck issue, dude. Like every year, he either leaves them in his hotel room or he's dropped them in the water twice.
Oh,
getting on the boat in the morning. Fucking twice.
Oh,
who does that? And then you're stressed out the whole freaking day.
Your day's ruined.
Day's ruined.
Keys it's like losing your wallet.
Oh yeah, totally.
He had a guy drive from 2 states away just to bring his spare key while we were charter fishing.
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, at least what's worse, losing your keys or leaving your
All right. You get really tired.
4 times,
like
5 times,
15, 20 days straight.
I've done the
we get on the boat. We're leaving. We come back. Goes to start his truck. He's like, I left my truck running all day again.
I think I did that once actually.
Hey, I mean, you get back and it's just fucking dead as a doornail.
Holy shit, it's funny.
I've put fucking like keys in the fridge. I mean, I've done a lot of that, especially after a charter. Like I come home, I'm just like,
yeah,
just putting shit in weird places. One time I put like a watch that I wear every day. I stuck it in like my closet with like a bunch of like shoes, and then it rolled into my shoe, and then I was like, all right, somebody stole the watch. And then I was like calling my sprinkler guy, like, did you take my watch?
Oh shit, that's funny. Well,
this was fun.
as always, this is a blast. It's always great to talk to you, and you bring a wealth of knowledge, and your whole program behind Castafari is sweet. It's something that we've definitely followed and looked up to since we've known you. So appreciate you coming on again.
My pleasure.
So yeah, we will see you again in February.
A month.
Have fun in Belize. Hope you get the inshore slam on your paddleboard on a fly rod.
I'm gonna figure out how to do the dredge, man. Mini dredge paddleboard.
So funny. So on that, we'll end this on OG's 3 words of fishing wisdom. Remember, you can't catch them if you don't have a hook in the water. Always trust your instincts. And the last one, you'll just have to keep listening. Stay tight, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in to the SeaBros Fishing Podcast. If you would like more information about today's guest, our episode, and show sponsors, or if you want to order hats and apparel, please visit our website at SeaBrosFishing.com. You can also stay up to date on all the latest SeaBros Fishing content and podcast episodes by following us on Instagram at SeaBros Fishing. Finally, to book a trip with us through our family-run charter fishing company, please visit massbayguides.com or see our latest updates and fishing reports by following Mass Bay Guides on Instagram and Facebook.